Are you planning on traveling out of the country soon? Finally taking that dream vacation? Or is your company sending you overseas on business? When traveling, a lot of us like to bring something home. Maybe a lot of things. But there is something you should know about your foreign purchases. You may owe use tax. Hand-carried items or purchases you ship into California could be subject to use tax. Use tax is similar to the sales tax you pay when making purchases in California. Typically, use tax is owed when you buy from out-of-state or online sellers where sales tax is not charged. Or when taking a trip abroad, it's easy to pay use tax. Just report and pay it on your state income tax return. The revenue collected from use tax helps pay for California services like public safety, healthcare, and schools. So, have a great time, but don't forget to keep track of what you buy because you may owe use tax. Now you're ready for that next big adventure. To learn more, visit boe.ca.gov. Paying your use tax. Good for you, good for California.
It's easy to buy things online these days, but did you know you may need to pay tax on those items?
Really?
It's called use tax. And just like sales tax, the use tax you pay to California will help fund important services like public safety, healthcare, and schools. But how do you know if you owe use tax? When you buy things online, look to see if you were charged tax when you checked out. If you weren't, you may owe use tax. It's easy to figure out how little you may owe. For most purchases, you don't even have to save your receipts. Just use this convenient use tax table, available in your income tax instructions. Find your adjusted gross income to see how much you may owe, and enter that amount when preparing your state income taxes. It's that simple. No looking through files and no hassles. You've paid your use tax for the whole year.
That was easy.
Paying your use tax. Good for you. Good for California.
It used to be that shopping for a gift meant taking a trip to Main Street. Boy, how things have changed. These days, you don't have to leave the comfort of your own home, thanks to the convenience of online shopping. But there's something you should know about shopping online. You may owe use tax. When you buy a gift online, look to see if you were charged tax when you checked out. If you weren't, then you may owe use tax. It's similar to the sales tax you pay when making purchases from stores in California. Use tax is typically owed when you buy from an out-of-state or online seller that does not charge you tax. It's easy to pay your use tax. Just report and pay it on your state income tax return, or download and use our BOE mobile app. The revenue collected from use tax helps pay for important California services like public safety, healthcare, and schools. We hope your next birthday, anniversary, or holiday gathering is filled with many great memories.
Come on, Grandpa!
And lots of great gifts.
You brought a couple gifts.
Bring them in, boys.
But don't forget to keep track of what you buy online, because you may owe use tax. To learn more, visit boe.ca.gov. Paying your use tax. Good for you. Good for California.
We're committed to supporting our communities. teaming up with businesses large and small, improving our roads and schools, investing in law enforcement and our environment. Together, we're funding a better quality of life. We're the California State Board of Equalization. The BOE was created in 1879 to equalize property tax assessment practices throughout California. Our responsibility has grown quite a bit since then. Today, the BOE administers more than 30 taxes and fees that provide 1/3 of all the revenue generated in our great state. And we're efficient. More than 99% of the money you contribute supports services and programs that benefit all of us in California. When you drive down our many highways, see a police officer helping someone in need, or enjoy a walk along a pristine beach, think about what makes it possible. Whether you're a business owner, making a purchase, or just filling up your gas tank, your contributions are important to our state's economic health. And the greatest part, we're doing it together. We're ready to work with you. Take advantage of our free seminars, helpful classes, instructional videos, and mobile applications. Also, use our online services. It's easy to do business with us from anywhere, at any time. Our partnership equals success. Learn more at boe.ca.gov. Together, we're supporting our communities and funding a better quality of life.
determine the quorum is present?
Chairwoman Harkey,
Here?
Mr. Renner,
Here.
Mr. Horton, Ms. Ma,
Here.
Ms. Stowers,
Here.
Thank you. There are at least 3 members present, actually 4, so we have a quorum, and the meeting of the Board of Equalization is hereby called to order. Ms. Richmond, please introduce our first item.
Our first item on this morning's agenda is the adoption of the board committee report and approval of committee actions for the legislative committee that was held yesterday. I don't believe we have copies of those minutes yet, so we'll take that up later today.
Okay, certainly. Thank you.
So our first item is item C, sales and use tax appeals hearings. Item C2, Stars Holding Company, LLC. Please come forward.
Mr. Angia from our appeals. Hi, how are you? If you would have a seat over here. Thank you.
Board Proceedings has received contribution disclosure forms for today's hearings from the parties, participants, and agents. All forms were properly completed and signed, and no disqualifying contributions were disclosed. All parties, participants, and agents are on the alpha listing provided to your office. Each person sitting at the table will be asked to introduce themselves and, if necessary, their affiliation with the taxpayer for the record. 10 minutes is allocated for the taxpayer's opening presentation, followed by 10 minutes for the department's presentation, and 5 minutes is allocated to the taxpayer for rebuttal. Chairwoman Harkey.
Thank you. Mr. Angia, he's from our appeals. Will you please introduce the issues in this case?
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. I'm Jeff Angija on behalf of the Appeals Division. The appeal before you presents one unresolved issue, which is whether claimant should be granted a refund of the amounts it paid in connection with the assessments of the Moraga tax increase.
This is our case?
Thank you.
Yes. Excuse me.
Okay,
I asked for hearing aid. I didn't hear what is going on. So could you please have a hearing aid before we go forward?
I think this taxpayer just asked us for a hearing device, and we have not had a chance to test it to make sure that it works. So if we could have a 5-minute recess.
Sure. Fine. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Check, 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 check.
Okay, let's try that. Good morning, Madam Chair and members. I'm Jeff Angija on behalf of the Appeals Division. The appeal before you presents one unresolved issue, which is whether claimant should be granted a refund of the amounts it paid in connection with the assessments of the Moraga tax increase.
Thank you. Welcome to the Board of Equalization. You have 10 minutes to present your case. After the initial presentation, the board will respond, and then you will have 5 minutes on rebuttal. So, 10 minutes. Proceed. And please introduce yourself for the record.
Yeah. Good morning. My name's Richard Stoll. I'm an attorney for Stars Holding Company. And Mr. Murray on my right is the accountant for Stars Holding Company. So I will start with what I see in this case, and then Mr. Murray will discuss some further issues. Now, hopefully you've gotten the exhibits we've provided, because I want to go through a little bit of that.
This one.
Yes. Okay, we're going to start right on the top, of course, make it easy. Now, we're talking about the quarters in question are 3 quarters in 2013. The first item on the top, right under the big Exhibit A, is the return that was filed for the first quarter of 2014. And I want to show you for a reason. If you go down through the return, 1, 2, 3, 4, down to page 5. It's only 1%. You will see that it says under Contra Costa County, 1%. And these returns are filed electronically. And then if we go down a few more pages, there's a blank page. Then we get into the return that was filed for 10/1 to 12/31. And we go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages. And again, Contra Costa County is listed at 1% in this return. And then the next return, we go down a couple more.
Hang on, I'm having trouble counting those pages down.
Okay.
Well, you just go to the last page of the report. It would be here where all the,
Page of the
where
report.
all the they're not separate, but where all the counties
I
are
got the first one,
listed.
it's the second one I can't.
Okay, that's probably 5 more pages.
Miss Tucker, can you give me your page number? I'm not gonna.
Well, I don't think they're numbered for exhibits. I just can tell you that they say, print this page, and then sales tax locations not in district tax area. And then you've got districts, which are San Joaquin, Stanislaus, Contra Costa, and San Francisco.
I'm there. Thank you very much.
I got it,
Thank you.
I'm there.
And I think he's going to provide us several of these, so we basically need to just get rid of the first few pages and go to that end page.
I have a 2% one.
Okay? Thank you.
Maybe. Yeah, I have to. One of them had 2%. Oh, how did, I think maybe I had the wrong one to start with, so I'm going to start over again, if you don't mind.
Okay,
Okay,
I'll try to go quick.
let's go.
So we go into the first page of the return.
yeah. Oh, the return now?
Yeah, we're at the first, we turn right under Exhibit A onto the first page.
Okay,
Okay,
And that's the return for 1/1/14 to 3/31/14.
right.
It's not one of the ones in issue, but then we go, use page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, and down to page 5.
Okay,
And that starts with down at the bottom, San Joaquin County, City of Moraga, Contra Costa County.
Yep.
Here.
Yep.
And it shows City of Moraga, Contra Costa County, 2%.
Okay.
And
That's the first quarter. of-
yeah, that's the first quarter of 14. That one's not in dispute. I'll just show it to you, because what I'm going to show you on the other returns is this information is all provided by the Board of Equalization. And when my client filled out these tax returns online, they only listed Contra Costa County at 1%. They hadn't upgraded their form. They're going to present a case that we should have known had been changed, should have read the newspapers and all this kind of stuff, but they didn't change their forms. So I was saying, why would they not change their forms so the taxpayer would know when he files? Because there's no way to modify these forms. You use the numbers that are in the forms. So then we go down a couple more pages, you come to a blank page, and then you're on the return for 10/1/13 to 12/31/13.
Fourth quarter of the.
Fourth quarter of 13, which is one of the quarters in question. And then you go down one, count the first page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you'll see Contra Costa County listed at 1%.
No, Moraga.
No Moraga had been added to it. So the taxpayer has no information based on this form that the tax has gone up in Contra Costa County, even though it did technically go up on April 1st of 2013. And then I don't know if you want to go through the next two forms that are in question, but they're the same. The State Board of Equalization did not put in the increase into their printed form, which is on the website, that the people are required to fill out for the state and pay their taxes. And then later on, they contacted Stars Holding and said, you didn't pay all the taxes that were due for the first 3 quarters of 2013. And Stars Holding looked at their forms and said, we filled it out exactly like your forms required. We put all the information in and calculated out the tax. And we never got the information you said we should have gotten. You say you send out, an email, but the email address they use is an email address I've never seen for Stars. I've been attorney for Stars since it was formed, and they've never used the email they said they sent them to. But they are sending the tax returns back and forth with a valid email. In any case, they did not know that the tax had gone up. And even if they had known, there's no way to modify this form to pay an additional tax. It's all calculated based on the computer program. So what can the poor client do? And then when they find out their form was an error, they contact the client, and they want him to pay not only the taxes, but interest and penalties for not having complied with, somehow, which I don't know how he could have complied. But basically, that's what I want to talk about, and then Mr. Mary wants to talk about other issues.
Thank you.
I am paying sales tax for almost 40 years. I have a master's degree from Berkeley, and always receive the form from a state board, which is all the rate and instruction is included. We always file it based on their instruction. And regardless of what's going on, we always follow their instruction to fill up the sales tax. In 2010, sales tax on a gasoline is regulated. How regulated? They reduce the sales tax, they increase the estate tax.
Right.
And what we did is, and diesel has a one rate, grocery has a one rate. So in a gas station, we really have to be very careful when we calculate the sales tax. For this reason, State Board of Equalization offer us online form which has all the rate and information. So there is no mistake. And we, from that point, we fill it out. In February of 2014, I received a call from the State Board of Equalization, Oakland office. And they said, you did not pay the district tax for city of Moraga. My understanding of district tax is usually a county, it called district, and then maybe a city tax increase, and has to be itemized than district. What I did is I asked them, we have here educated accountant, would you please send us our return? We want to see where we made a mistake. No response. Back and forth, we went and filed. I received a bill for almost $30,000, and I was told by Sacramento, I have no choice to don't lose the time and file the petition for redetermining the taxes. We did, and then we recommended, okay, go ahead and pay, otherwise interest and all this thing. We said, fine. We start to pay in a payment plan. Now we are end of the June. I said, they also ask us each time you pay the payment, please file the claim for refund, and which we did. And around the end of June of 2014, I asked where we are, why they don't send me the return is filed by us, and we paid for it, so I want to see where is the mistake is. I received a call, and if look on Exhibit B, Exhibit B, first page. They asked me to send them my calculation, a spreadsheet, how I calculate the tax. I said, you have the form, you have the return. Anyway, I said, fine, I send it to them, my spreadsheet, which is the last page of each quarter. You can see that. And they said, here the sample, how you fill the form. This form sent to me in July 14, 2014. 1 and 3 months later, they said, this is the sample, this is the blank form, please follow our instruction and fill it out. I did. I filled it out for 3 quarters based on that. And they received, I mailed it, faxed it to them on 21st, 1 week later. And then they receive it, and if you look on the first page of third page, first one is a sample, blank, and the third page, it said audited on July 28, 14, and you are short for each quarter about $10,000. Audited on July 28, 14. I called them. I said, I paid for it. What do you mean you audited now? He said, yeah, based on your form you sent. I said, you told me to amend it and fill it this way so we can look at it. And I follow instruction. On this new form they sent, there is a tax for Moraga. 1 and 15 months later, they sent me the blank form, which it said Moraga tax is a 1% for city tax. I said, all these 3 quarters, I filed it through online, and Mr. Stoll referred to it, is all said 1%. district tax. And now you come and say, oh, the city tax is 2%. I didn't know that. No response. And I argue with them, why you say is audited now, July 28th, on a February 12th of 2014, you inform me it's a short payment and it's almost $30,000, but now you tell me 7 months later, you audit it again. They said, yeah, based on amended form you sent, we audit you and you owe that much. This is really, I sincerely want this board to look to it. You are our voice sitting over there. If this employees or this department doesn't update the information which went in November 6 of 2012, it was passed and it went to effect on April 1st of 2013. State Board had the 4 months time to update their form. And their claim is why I didn't listen to the radio and television. I said, why you didn't listen and update the form? You want me to listen and change the form, and you're not changing it? And also I paid it. This is I paid $35,000 for this 3 quarters.
Time's expired.
Thank you.
Thank you. To the department, please introduce yourself for the record, and you also have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Pamela Mash from the board's legal department, along with Lawrence Mendel and Kevin Hanks representing staff. The amounts for which claimant seeks a refund were properly due to the board, and there's no basis in law for refunding these amounts to claimant. In April 2013, a district tax was implemented in Moraga, which increased the combined tax rate within Moraga from 8.5% to 9.5%. Claimant argues that it didn't know about the 1% tax increase, and for that reason it failed to report or pay the additional tax rate. Claimant argues that it was only informed of the new tax rate when it was contacted by the department in February 2014. In February 2015, claimant paid the liability in full and filed this claim for refund. There is no statutory authority for relieving a tax liability based on a taxpayer's lack of knowledge or the contention that the department didn't adequately inform or educate a taxpayer about a tax increase. That said, the department made reasonable efforts to convey information about the tax increase to permit holders by sending out one tax information bulletin, 2 special notices, and a news release which contained information about the new tax rates. Also, this tax increase was a result of a passage of Measure K in the town of Moraga, which the town's voters approved by 70%. And there was a lot of information in the media surrounding this measure before it passed during the November 2012 elections. In fact, of the 351 permit holders in the area, only 3 were billed for underreporting the district tax, and that includes this claimant. So clearly the information about the tax increase was out there, and pretty much all of the other businesses in the area recognized that it applied to them, and they reported it correctly using the forms we provided online, the same forms that claimant used. I'd also like to point out that the first notice of determination was sent to claimant on December 2nd, 2013, and it included specific information about the tax increase and the reason for the liability. So at the very least, claimant had direct notification from the department before the 4th quarter 2013 tax return was due, and yet he continued to underreport anyway. But more importantly, and really what's at issue here today, is that there is no statutory authority for relieving this tax liability simply because claimant was unaware of the tax increase. Claimant paid the correct amount of tax that was legally due, and there was no overpayment of tax by claimant. Claimant simply paid what all other businesses in Moraga paid, nothing more. There's nothing to refund to claimant. There's absolutely no basis in law or in equity for granting this claim for refund. And for that reason, it should be denied. I would like to ask Mr. Hanks to address the issue about the forms that were updated online.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and members. Wanted to share the information concerning how the tax rate forms identify the different district taxes that are applicable. And so I don't know if the petitioner is aware that we've got a Contra Costa district tax as well as a City of Moraga tax. Both of those could have been input into his e-filed return and submitted to us. That information is captured on our Schedule A return. That's a paper return that the taxpayer has been provided a copy of and that he was referencing earlier this morning. But I just wanted to clarify that there are district taxes that apply to both the county and the city, and I think perhaps that's confusing for the taxpayer and their accountant.
Thank you. Okay, you have 5 minutes on rebuttal.
Well, I would just say that I think the department could have done a lot better to get the information out to this taxpayer. They mentioned that there's only 3 out of 150 businesses that didn't report the tax right. Now, I suspect most of those are businesses and people that live in Moraga. You know, Mr. Mary doesn't live in Moraga, so he's not a resident, and he owns gas stations in various places, as you can see on the returns, throughout Northern California. So he's not apt to keep up with what's going on in Moraga and get that news. But the effect of not knowing about the tax increase hurts his business dramatically, because this is a gasoline station, which basically makes about 10 cents a gallon gross profit. And when the tax goes up 1% with a 10-cent margin, the gas at $3, that's 3 cents. So you lose about a third of your profit, gross profit, you expect to pay all your expenses. So that's what his real complaint is, that he didn't, if he had knowledge, he could have adjusted his prices accordingly to be able to recoup the tax increase, because that's what a gasoline station and most businesses do. If there's an increase in your cost, you can't absorb it to you're working for free or not making any money. You have to be able to pay your employees and your other maintenance expenses on the business. So, okay, now Mr. Mary wants to say a few words.
There is a sales tax reduction in the state of California effective January of this year. 1 quarter went down. But we didn't reduce it. We look at the form and we confirm it with the state board. It said gasoline is regulated. These changes doesn't affect the gasoline. If the gasoline is regulated and any changes it doesn't affect, this one person, if it's affect, why they didn't tell us? How we can, it said three people. I bet you the 3 people is 3 gas stations. We have 3 gas stations in Morocco. So for sure, all of, because we are believing the gasoline, diesel, grocery in gas station is regulated. We don't look at anyway. We just listen to the state board and guide how we should file the form, and accordingly raise the price, or if it's reduced. There is no way on a gasoline the tax goes down. It usually goes up, and we always watch. And changes is happen in April or July 1st. But we watching very careful. The changes is happen to the sales tax is different than a gasoline. That's the reason gasoline is regulated. We pay a state tax. No product you pay a state tax besides the fuel. We pay federal tax. Anyway, it was lack of information by a state. A state had enough time to update the form. Not send me the mailing form 15 months later and ask me, okay, amend it this way, and now we audit you. That was absolutely a game they played with me. and I didn't like it. They didn't tell me, okay, they filed the amended, and we're gonna audit you again. They said, file it. They sent me the sample, and I did it, and they said, okay, now you are audited. I believe we shouldn't be charged, and we paid it, but is most of our profit even there. Even in 2014, when I heard about it on middle of February, almost 45 days, we lost that penny increase. We immediately increased because we just heard about it. We never got the notice on December. First time I received the call, it was from Oakland, February 12, on our new office. Thank you very much. I hope you look in this matter carefully for sake of the public, the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, discussion?
Yeah.
Member Ma.
Okay, so to the department, I see that the actual forms, which were revised 7/13, did have the new City of Moraga tax, right?
Correct.
The code 301, .02 tax rate. And I see when the taxpayer filled out the manual form, he did separate a number in the Contra Costa line, code 025 at 1%, then he split out his City of Moraga in code 301 under that tax rate. Then if you go to the State Board of Equalization filing, tell me what happened. Is there an actual, because I don't see the 301 tax code in his 2013 filings, but then I see it on the 2014 filings. So I guess my question to you is, did you guys update your electronic filing forms to make sure that there was that City of Moraga 301 code? So if he filed it exactly like his manual form, he would have seen, put the Contra Costa in the 025 code, put the City of Moraga in the 301 code.
Right. Ms. Ma, that's a great question, and actually that's the first time that the taxpayers made this argument that code didn't appear in our electronic filing. I don't have a copy of the electronic filing information in front of me. To my knowledge, no one has ever indicated that there was an issue with our electronic filing. The paper returns that I'm working from are the ones that the taxpayer filed with us that were amended and then subsequently filed with the board. Actually, there were two amended returns that the taxpayer filed. The first electronic copy that was filed with us, we noted that the Moraga tax was not reported, and so that triggered an exception within our return analysis or our local revenue area. That also triggered a notice of determination for what appeared to be the unreported district tax. That happened in early December. So our records indicate the taxpayer was put on notice in early December that this was happening. A short time thereafter, we communicated with the taxpayer, indicated to them over the phone that there were problems with the reporting, and so we engaged in communications with them to file amended returns. They filed a set of amended returns that looked as though it overreported or increased the tax from our perspective, so we communicated with them further. We made a reduction in the amount of tax it was owing in a second amended return that the taxpayer filed with us. But it was discussions with our local revenue branch and the taxpayer that resulted in the amended returns that we have before us and the self-declared amounts that are before us. So.
No, I understand that, but I'm just asking, when did our Board of Equalization update the electronic filing forms to make sure that the code was in there?
I don't have that
Because
information.
that's what the taxpayer is saying, is that there was no code for Moraga, and therefore he put both of the amounts in the Contra Costa line. Am I right, Ms.
Ma'am,
Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct. And on the form they sent to me is sent to me 15 months later.
I understand that. I understand that. But that's what I'm saying, is that he filed online timely, right? Those are the first 3 forms.
Right.
And the 2013 forms, tax filings, do not have the Moraga code.
I can say categorically that code 301 was on the e-file return. I've received that information from staff indicating to me that that does appear on the electronic form.
May I just ask a quick question here, I think for our own edification? How does the electronic form get populated with the counties and the areas you're supposed to pay?
So the electronic form knows the location from which you're operating from. That information would have been pre-populated, but then the taxpayer is guided through the electronic form and asked to report sales that occur in each of those individual locations. But it's up to him or her to remember and be mindful that if you've got sales within the city of Moraga, that those sales are subject to that increased tax rate.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No. So you're saying because his address was in Moraga, there should have been
Yes.
a question that said, how much is your Moraga sales?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And, I mean, he filled it out correctly on his handwritten one after. So are you saying because it didn't show up, he didn't put it on the right line?
He didn't
He didn't populate the Moraga
didn't
one, and he
populate
just
the
put
Moraga.
everything in the Contra Costa
Correct.
line. That's your contention, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Member Runner?
Yeah, let me just, let me go to this form that the taxpayers are using to kind of, trying to point out what they think was the misinformation that the board provided. And that would be the second set of filing, I believe, which is in the period. And going to that last page, if I can get there, yeah, going to that last page where it lists the district taxes that are listed there.
Period.
And this is during the right period, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is during the right period. Let me just ask again, from the taxpayer's point of view, what is significant about that line? Tell me again.
Is very important to us because it guide us to what is the rate is, and we calculate the sales tax for city or district or whole sales tax. That is give us the guide to calculate, and that's the regulation.
And you would say that this is the printed out version after you did it, right? That's what I have in front of me.
Which form?
I'm looking at
The electronic.
the electronic filing form here that you guided us to.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the printed out form that you did after, that you did.
We look in it comes to the computer, and then we give them the information.
Right, but this is the printed out form
Right.
that you printed out then as a result of filling out the form electronically.
Right.
Okay. And what you're saying here is during that form indicates that there was nothing then that was called out for that new city tax.
Right.
Okay, so let me go back to the department.
Right.
You tell me about this form. Why would that take place in a form that he then populated with the numbers that he was prompted with, I assume, and then the form would not indicate anything about a local city, new city tax?
Right. Mr. Renner, the taxpayer in this case has multiple locations. So he operates from multiple districts. So actually, the form that would populate in his computer screen wouldn't pre-populate with those locations. It would actually identify all locations. He would have to allocate where his sales are made within each of those jurisdictions.
Well,
so he would have to know that Okay, I'm making sales in Moraga. I need to populate
So
that,
let me ask you this
that
then.
line.
Let me ask you this then. Then these items that are listed here, that are shown here as a report, part of this report, are based upon what he inputted into the computer.
Correct.
That's what makes them show up here.
Correct.
So for instance, if indeed he, for instance, forgot to put in San Joaquin County and put a 0 in there, San Joaquin County would not show up on this report.
Correct.
Okay. So I guess I'm just trying to get to the bottom line of what this report shows. So what I'm hearing from the department is the reason why the city is not on here is because that particular item was not filled out on the line, excuse me, in the report when it is that you were putting the numbers in the report.
Sir, this, first of all, we have a multiple location, as you see in the allocation of this, each county, it says what is the rate is, and is San Quinn is half, and Contra Costa is 1, and Stainless Lies.
Right.
We look at this rate, and then we say, if this much sales happen, the gasoline tax is 2.25. We add if there's any district tax, like in Contra Costa, we add 1%, and then we also calculate 1% for City of Moraga. If City of Moraga is not here, we don't calculate it. Has to be in the form, which.
Well, hold on, okay, that's good. But what I'm hearing is, what you're giving us is the report to which gets generated after you fill out the form.
Right.
Okay, so it doesn't, for instance, if you would have not, well, in fact, that's the case, if you didn't pay City of Moraga, then it doesn't show up on the form.
Right.
Okay, so going back to the department, right now, at least from what you're getting report back, that indeed at the time, there was, in the form, that was listed, the city was listed at the time of this filing, there was listed the new city tax.
Yes, that's correct.
And you are saying it was not listed.
No, I provide you the copy of my return for 3/4. It was not.
You mean what I'm looking at right now?
Right.
Again, I hear you, but I think you're trying to use this form differently than how it's developed.
He's saying on the blank form, there would have been a City of Moraga tax.
Right, that's my point. My point would be on the form that was on there, it was there, and it would have, and if you would have paid it, it would have shown up in this report.
Right,
At least that's what I'm understanding. Let me go, okay, so again, we need to kind of walk through this argument, because this is kind of a new argument than I was aware of in regards to the issue of what our forms had versus what you were looking at. That,
Right.
to me, that was kind of new, and I need to kind of walk through that. Now, let's go back to the other issue, which was kind of the original argument that I thought was a concern that we need to talk through, and that is notification.
Right.
Multiple notifications were sent to the taxpayer. Why wouldn't, well, let me ask you this. Were those notifications sent to the taxpayer with his normal address that we would send all updates in regards to what's happening and communication that the BOE would have with that in particular individual?
Yes, as far as we know. It should
Okay.
all be the same address.
I guess the question is, apparently those were not received? Is that what the argument is?
They keep telling me they email it to us. And
Right.
I asked for email, and Mr. Stoll also. They give us some email which are absolutely not related to us. It was different email. They said, this is not our email.
But he does have,
Walk up to the mic.
sorry, he does have quite a few notices, and I looked through all the notices he has.
Recently.
From that time period, and he didn't have a notice that I saw in there that talked about.
And were those
Moraga
notices
tax.
sent to the same email?
No, they were delivered in the mail.
They deliver it in the mail.
Okay, let me ask about the mail delivery.
Right.
What address do we use for the email, the mail delivery?
I'd have to look that up, but if the email address that we sent it to bounced back to us, we would send a hard copy to the
Right, but if,
correct address of record.
yeah, but
Which is
if
where all
indeed
the
it was an
other
email
stuff
and
went.
somebody else received it, didn't bounce back,
Right.
we would know.
Then we
right?
wouldn't.
But how about hard copies?
see
What
what
kind of,
the-
what's our policy in regards to sending hard copies?
So we send hard copies, and if they get returned as an undeliverable address, then we try to connect with the taxpayer to find.
Hard copies, when you say undeliverable, you mean they're returned by the U.S. mail?
Gets back from the mail. right.
Okay, so, and what address did we use? Was that a different address than we had used in previous times for hard copy mail?
I think it's all been the same address. It would be 398 Ream Boulevard.
Okay, is
That's
that,
the
what address is that?
That's a gas station.
Okay, so the gas station was receiving these notifications.
Your Honor, this, sir, this is a 4-unit, and we have Star Holding doing business in 4.
Right.
We have a PO box for all our notices. It's 15 years we established this, so we don't.
So you would say that the BOE was in error for sending notices to the address? That is not a valid notification to the owner?
No, I don't say. The 398 is one of the 4 stations.
Okay,
And
so-
they never send it. They send the notice to a Star Holding Company in the PO box.
What's
We
the
always
address?
get
What's the address of that?
address?
PO Box 5728, Concord, California, 94524.
Do we have any record of that as an address to which we correspond?
Ordinarily, we'd send notices to the business address that's identified in the application.
Okay.
And the application identifies the 398 Ream address. So that's generally the.
Okay, so the
address of record.
application for the permit that you operate with uses the street address.
Right.
Because first Moraga got the sales tax. In 2011, when the Star Holding created, and 3 other station is combined with that, so we have a one sales tax number for Star Holding, and then we have sub-account 1, 2, 3, 4, and Star Holding address. Application for Ream Boulevard is belong to, if you look at it, I guarantee you, is 06. It's sometime in June or May or June of 06. That's the first time that the station purchased and operate.
Okay, let me ask you this, just in terms of operation. Gasoline sales is pretty competitive,
Very.
right? Pretty competitive, right?
Right.
So if all the other gas stations in your area were paying the tax, okay?
Yes.
And your taxpayer wasn't, how did he adjust his price?
It's so, gasoline is really very sensitive. 1% or half a percent.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
We immediately calculated this way. We have the cost, we add all the taxes.
Right.
Then add the margin, and then calculate the sales tax. And that's the way we're watching all the
You don't calculate price based upon your competitors?
We base on our margin. We can meet the competition, but if competition is, for example, is Costco.
Right.
They sell it below
Right,
cost.
right.
We cannot, we just,
Okay.
we say we want a 10 cent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? Ms. Stowers?
Thank you. Okay, my notes indicate that BOE sent the notification to an email address. And where did BOE get that email address from?
That's from the application for seller's permit.
Seller's permit.
So that's on the application for seller's permit.
Correct.
When BOE sends notifications via email, is there any type of notation within the taxpayer's account that a notification was sent? Is there a trace, a record, an indicator?
There is a trace today, and so beginning 2014, actually, there's a trace, and so we identify those accounts that bounce back to us as not valid addresses for whatever reason. When that happens, it automatically triggers a notification to the system where we send paper copies of special notices, tax-free increases, TIBs, and so on to the taxpayer.
Was that in place for these particular quarters? For prior to, well, you said 2014, so the notice went out in 2013. I just answered my own question.
Correct.
Okay, so it is in place now, so we don't have to ask Kraus to do it.
Correct. Correct.
And I think I'm okay with, and just kind of summarize, the first Exhibit A represent the end result of the tax return of the data that was inputted by the tax representative or the taxpayer. But BOE is saying that a line was there for the city of Moraga for information to be inputted, and had the information been inputted, the appropriate tax rate would have shown and been computed.
That's correct.
So there's no error in BOE's forms.
Correct.
If there was an error, appeals, would this be subject to relief under 6596?
That would be the only legal theory by which you could do it. This being a self-reported return and the evidence that we've heard about how and where it got populated, I don't know that you have advice given by the department.
Okay, great, okay. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you. Any other member comment?
I have another.
Yes, Ms. Ma.
Okay, I have one more question. So in the taxpayers' filing period 4/1 to 6/30/2013, there is a summary sheet that shows 4 locations. His Walnut Creek, Moraga, San Francisco, Wesley locations. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Then in his 10/1, 2013 to 12/31/2013, it looks like he bought another location. There's a Walnut Creek, the Moraga, San Francisco, Lodi, and Wesley. So it looks like he bought a Lodi location sometime between July 1st through October.
August, actually.
You bought it in August, okay. So I'm wondering, when he who inputs these addresses? Is it the BOE or is it the taxpayer? Like, how did you know that he bought a place in Lodi on his electronic filing?
He would typically indicate that to us, or he can populate the form and identify that he's making sales from a new district.
Okay.
So he can populate the screen and identify sales being made from a new location.
Okay, but if not, if he came in and took out a seller's permit or did it online, would it automatically, it would be in the system presumably, right? That he bought a new site, Lodi, he got a new permit number, that he now is going to be reporting since it showed up on the summary sheet. So somehow either we did it or he did it.
Right.
Okay,
right.
so to the taxpayer, like,
What we do is we inform the State Board of Equalization. We now have sub-account number 5.
Okay.
And this is the address.
Okay.
Please add it to our form. We want to pay the sales tax on that account.
Right. So presumably, like when these screens pop up, these pilot screens, it's because of the taxpayer putting in, now he has a site in Lodi. So Lodi should come up saying, how much taxes did you pay in Lodi?
So it would identify, let's say, the Lodi location, and it would ask you what's a taxable measure for sales made from Lodi.
Right.
And then it's got a pre-calculated tax
Right.
rate for that area, and then it would identify the district taxes owing now from that location.
Okay, but he owns one in Moraga. So wouldn't Moraga also populate saying, you have a location in Moraga, and this is the tax rate for Moraga, how much sales did you make in Moraga?
Right. That would happen if he only had a single location. If he's got multiple locations, then actually he needs to populate the form and identify where the sales are being made from, each of the different district locations. So if you've got a single location, it's going to pre-populate. If you've got multiple locations, you need to allocate.
Okay, so he has 5 locations now. So you're saying nothing would pop up on the screen. He would have to go and figure it all out. Whether he owes in Walnut Creek, there's a separate city tax in Walnut Creek, Moraga, San Francisco, Lodi, or Wesley. That it would not pop up automatically saying, you have a location in San Francisco, has an additional tax, how much sales did you have in San Francisco, and then list the tax. You're saying that does not happen, like he would have to go figure it out and populate whatever the box was.
Well, he wouldn't have to go in and figure it out. I mean, he would know, obviously, where his locations are, and probably he would have had some instruction from the board when he came in and obtained a new application for a seller's permit, and we would have guided him through this process. But the form as it comes up is going to identify all the district areas, all the counties where they might have locations, and the district staff would have communicated to them, if you're operating in Lodi or Moraga or Sacramento, this is what you need to do on the district tax form. You need to identify whether or not you're making sales from each of these areas. But the form has grown over time. As we're all aware, the special taxing jurisdictions have increased incrementally over the past 30 years. I've been here 30 years. I remember when we had 10 of these. We're over 200 of these special taxing jurisdictions today. So it means that the form is long, but you need to know, hey, if I'm operating from Sacramento County or Lodi or whatever location, I need to scroll down in that form, find that location, populate it with the sales made from that location. So that would have been communicated to the taxpayer.
I get it, but how do we know that when the Moraga tax passed in April of 2013, that our electronic filing forms were updated? How do we know that?
I verified that with our administrator and our return analysis.
Well, I get it. Do we have a writing? I mean, something that says, hey, we've updated these forms. They are up to date. I mean, just because you verify, I can verify too, but we ask the taxpayers to prove. We ask you guys to prove. So how do we know that our electronic filing section updated the the electronic filing forms? That's all I'm asking. Besides verifying with someone, how do we know?
Our TSD division would have been responsible for modifying that form, and our TPD folks would have been responsible for amending the form and creating that new space for the 301 district code. So we would definitely have the paperwork that identifies exactly when that coding happened.
Okay, so how long would it take to get it to us?
We can get that to you within a week. I mean, we can identify when that happened and when that information
Okay, because I'm interested, because that's what I hear, is that there was a new tax. The tax form was updated, but not the electronic filing on the computer side. So that's what I'm hearing, and so I'd like to...
The electronic filing was updated. So that was updated. So
Okay.
that 301 code was most definitely in place at the time that the taxpayer could have reported these sales to us back in 2013. It was updated.
Okay, so I guess my question then to Mr. Amiri, did you file the tax returns yourself?
No, we have an accountant. I am head of the accountant.
Huh? You have an accountant doing it?
I have an accountant.
Okay, so did the accountant not know the new law?
No, they know. She is the graduate. She's master's degree. We go over it. She worked for me for 8 years. And
okay.
She is very, we really looking on the form. as the gentleman said, there is changes constantly happen to this sales tax. And I want to make sure we get the information from a state board.
Right.
If we just follow their guideline.
No, I get it. So are you saying that your accountant knew that they were supposed to allocate the number from Contra Costa, also put the Moraga number in? That there was a new tax, there was a new code, that
We
they
didn't
were
know.
supposed to do it, and they just didn't do it, or it wasn't there?
It was not there, and actually, when we heard, both of us heard, we was very surprised. And we asked constantly, we asked, please send us our return and to see where we made a mistake. They never give us the form. They didn't, we said, let's see where is our mistake is.
I'd like to see this,
No,
see if it's
they never give us the copy. Even I was with the attorney from State Board, Miss Abrams, Eva Abrams. I asked her, and she asked the Oakland, please send us their return. They want to see where is mistake. They never did, because we had our form in our hand and doesn't have anything about the Moraga. We want to see what we find.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Renner.
What, again, how many accounts do we have in the city?
351,
351?
correct.
And how many of them missed paying this particular issue?
In addition to this taxpayer, 2 were billed for underreporting the district tax.
So it's far less than 1%. So we had a
Yes, and everybody
99,
uses
we had a
the same terms.
99.3% compliance.
And it's all the same forms online, and it's all the same hard copy paper forms that people get. We don't have different forms for different businesses, so
Mm-hmm.
everybody used the same forms.
That's actually a way of looking to see whether or not the programming was in effect. I mean, other people reported.
That's what I'm kind of going, that's what I'm trying to think through. It
Right.
seems to
So
me
it-
if we were in error there, we'd have some kind of a
More numbers.
spike
Sure.
Right.
of non-compliance.
Right.
Right. At that point, because I got to believe of those numbers, there's there's a lot of people with multiple businesses, and I'm sure
Sure.
many of those gas stations and many of those other folks in those kind of businesses have multiple locations in other jurisdictions.
Sure.
Not entirely unique. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to kind of round this out. My big concern was that the form was populated by the Board of Equalization, that it popped out for him and he entered the numbers. What I hear you saying is there's a drop-down menu.
Right.
You go and you select where you are. If it's a county, is there a subcategory somewhere for the cities and under the counties?
There is. Well, it's
Because it has
in
to
the
be,
same.
yeah, okay,
same listing,
as long as
actually.
it's in the same kind of listing.
Right.
So, here's where I am. I totally understand and appreciate the issue. The problem that I have is that when you're self-reporting, as it appears we did here, because you're saying it was never in the choices, the listing of choices of items. And I think if it's more than one other service station, and was it other service stations that we had the problem with? Excuse me?
I don't have that information exactly who the
Okay.
businesses were.
I do understand the complexities, but I think when you're going to a form and you're pulling down your choices of locations, I do feel that somewhat is up to you. I've heard all of this, and I've understood, but it appears to me you did have access to the same form that everyone else had, and that once you were notified, the next time automatically you did pull it down. I had thought that the board, when we initially started, that the board, automatically populated your return with the information that it had on the permits. And now what I'm hearing is that is not true, that if you have multiple locations, you need to populate your own form to use the online filing.
No, that's not correct.
Well,
because if you look at the form.
Okay,
We total it and then.
okay, excuse me,
divide.
sir. This is not really a debate.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just wrapping this
apologize.
up. Yeah, I would love
apologize.
to hear from you, but I've
Oh.
listened to everybody.
Okay,
And my
apologize.
two questions were, how does the information pop up on the e-filing? How is it populated? And I've heard the taxpayer has a menu and pulls that down. The second question I have is, did you ever even collect it? And that's the no. And that's where I am in sympathy with you, though I don't believe there's anything we can do about that legally. So that's kind of where I am, but I will entertain any motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
move to adopt staff recommendation to deny the claim for refund.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any objection? No, we don't. We apologize, but your claim is denied, and we support the administration.
What else you can do besides?
Thank you.
Thank you.
This process from day one is a state board to the end. You see you in court.
Well, the other businesses.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Now, Ms. Richmond, please introduce the next item.
Our next item is C3, Douglas B. Davidian, please come forward.
For the extra tax? Yeah.
He would, it would be based upon what my neighbors were selling. So,
I wasn't even focused on that. I was just.
yeah, I know, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Anjija, will you please introduce the issues in this case?
Madam Chair and members, the appeal before you presents two unresolved issues, which are whether petitioner is personally liable as a responsible person under Section 6829 for the liabilities of California Business Furnishings and desk chairs and more. The second issue is whether adjustments for bad debts are warranted.
Thank you. Mr. Davidian, I believe that's the name?
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay. You have 10 minutes. Please introduce yourself for the record, make your case in 10 minutes, then it will go over to the department. They have 10 minutes, and then you will have 5 minutes upon rebuttal.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
My name
you.
is Doug Davidian. I'm the founder and president and CEO of multiple companies that were owned by California Business Furnishings and connected with them. I'm going to try to put this evidence in context, and I will give you a timeline today to clarify what happened, when it happened, why it happened, and what control I did have or didn't have. I will share testimony from our CFO regarding pertinent issues. I will show evidence of the lockbox that we've been talking about all along, which allowed the bank to manage all the money and such. California Business Furnishings and Contract Interiors was in business for 24 years. I'm just trying to give you the background of who we are. It was selling and collecting, we sold furniture, and we collected about $1 million worth of revenue, sold and collected about $1 million of revenue a week. So we were pretty busy. It was structured as multiple companies, all S-corps, that had operating agreements with California Business Furnishings. So California Business Furnishings could do the accounting, the HR, the marketing, the banking, and we handled all that banking with one account. The financial statements, on the other hand, for each sub S corp and the balance sheets were done with direct and indirect allocations of revenues and expenses. Same thing with the sales tax. Okay, so as far as a timeline goes, this is a little bit of background, but it kind of weaves into the story of the last 7-8 months of the company. The time was the middle of '08, and people, vendors, clients, everybody was getting a little afraid of money in California. It was a little harder time. And along the way in May, I had, they found out I had cancer surgery, so I was out, they did surgery, I was out of the business for a while. I had a team of managers to run it. In July, our bank, right while I'm still recovering from the surgery, a week time for me, but our bank goes bankrupt, Merced County Bank. And the effect of that was that we had at the time about 150 employees, again, doing $1 million a week. But the effect was we had a $5 million line of credit. And when the federal government came in and told them what to do, their hands were tied. They took and pulled out $3 million of cash flow. They delayed funding our we had a receivables line of credit that when product shipped, we collected money. They said, okay, we're going to pay that money 1 month later. Well, you take out $3 million of cash flow when people are afraid and I'm not paying my vendors, we've got a problem. And lo and behold, shortly after that, I had a second cancer surgery, kidney cancer surgery. So, it was a hard time, and I'm not in the game fully loaded. So in July and August, we had actually switched banks to Bridge Bank, and that's important timeline because they would release funds. We went from 75% to 70% when product shipped. But there were a lot of terms and conditions, and it was very expensive money, certainly. Not an issue. Then along comes November, about the early part of middle of November. We had, up until this point, we had always paid, we were paying $3 to $4 million in state tax a year. We paid them for 23, 24 years, always on time, always in full, and had made payments as early as the evidence shows, as early November. And that's when I lost total control. Sometime around the 18th, 19th of November, the lockbox agreement was executed, and you have that in front of you as evidence. The purpose of the lockbox was to control funds. From that time on, the Bridge Bank dictated the terms of who and what and when we could pay it. I'll speak to that a little bit more in detail. But it was at about the 19th or 20th of November when that document was executed that's when the turning point was, and I didn't have any abilities to tell Bridge Bank what to do and not to do. In fact, the multiple times that we did ask them to pay, they said no. Let's see. Payroll had started to shrink in October, and then in about the middle of December is when the business closed itself. What was left was a skeleton crew, again, to finish out some of the wish list items and the furniture delivering and things of that nature. There was a week by week saying, hey, here's 7 people, here's 5 people, here's 4 people, here's what we're doing. We're trying to collect the receivables, which makes everybody whole, and that happened in November. And that process dwindled down from November through March. I want to refer to another document that Robin Hankins, who was our CFO, she ran the day-to-day, managed all the day-to-day accounting and accounting actions. She was the lead in the day-to-day conversations, week-to-week conversations with the bank and vendors and communications and with all the vendors and all the those kinds of questions. She testifies, and the evidence shows that through early November, all sales taxes were paid and current, except for apparently a small $270 some odd. And I was able to talk with her, and she said, well, that was an adjustment, and they always make adjustments, and by the time we found out about the adjustment, we were already closed, and it was not dealt with. But you can see that we paid tens of thousands of dollars in late October and in November. So that's, she also testifies that in her testimony that Larry LaCroix from Bridge Bank required a new calculating base. The specifics are, it was calculated weekly, and then out of that, they would develop what taxes, what payroll, what utility, what vendor payments. And the only reason a vendor payment would have been made was because we already shipped $800,000 or $900,000, and there was another $20,000 or $30,000 that needed to be released so we can get the customer to pay us for the $800,000. You know, it's when you have there's only one item shipped, who cares? But when you've got that much money sitting out there, and maybe it wasn't always 800 or 900, but it might have been 100,000. And again, we made a lot of vendor payments every month in August, September, August. We were doing $1 million a week. That's what we do. They dried up in December completely. There's no evidence that shows that we were making vendor payments or such. Robin testifies that Doug Davidian, was no longer in control of payments to any entity. Funds were provided by Larry LaCroix in the bank via a spreadsheet every week, and he approved funds for rent, utilities, keep the office open, payroll, warehouse, a couple of people, and again, when vendor payments are needed in that way. Her closing paragraph was, Mr. Davidian was not in the capacity to authorize any payments on behalf of the company during November 08 through March of 09, therefore did not willfully deny the payments in question. The authorization of payments on the company on behalf of the company was the sole discretion of Mr. Larry LaCroix from Bridge Bank, acting on behalf of Bridge Bank. Just a couple of other points to close with. As to my pay during this whole time, it looks like there was a little confusion, so I tried to put that into a context that would go, oh, yeah, that's probably what is happening here. I forwarded to you my 2005 through 2009 front page of the tax return. Our pay plan was $400,000 a year base pay, and in 2005, because of cafeteria plans and 401 plans, which reduced my gross, it was $360 in 2005. In 2006, it was $369. In 2007, it was $374. All years where it started off at $400. In 2008, my W-2 reported income, my income was $209,000. It dropped almost $200,000. And that was all paid in the first 6-7 months of the year. The last 6-7, I was one of the first to ratchet down my pay and eliminate my pay, and the evidence is there because I didn't get a W-2, and we were, you know, there was a comment made that when the company filed a bankruptcy, the numbers that were referred to there, $240,000 that was paid to me, it wasn't what was paid to me, it was what was owed to me. It was pay I didn't get. I was trying to put myself down as a creditor of the company, so when there was, because there should have been, extra money at the end, after everybody, including the state board, was paid, there should have been plenty of money, then I would have got a percentage of that. That was not what I took, but it was what, and there's no evidence that I took it, because if I took that, then this number would have been bigger than the others, or at least as big. And then in 2009, I took $42,000. Also as evidence, I didn't present the evidence, but I'll bring it as personal testimony. I also put in 2008, monies I didn't have to put in the business, which was all of my 401k plan and my kids' college plan. It wasn't the smartest, brightest thing to do, but I believed it was the right thing to do. And so I did it, and it was about $700,000. Obviously, that was never seen again. So I'll close with this. I am sorry for the close of these companies. I'm sorry for the lives it hurt. I am sorry for the difficulties in the closing, like this one here today. This is a difficult situation. But the evidence shows when I had control of the company through mid-November, our companies always did the right things, and especially in terms of sales tax, we had years of collecting millions and tens of millions of dollars and paying it on time, and we made a payment in early November even, when I wasn't getting paid. So this is part of who I am. We will always do the right thing, and I just want to lastly say that from mid-November on, I had no control of any of the company's resources. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The department, you have 10 minutes.
Good morning,
Introduce yourself. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairwoman Harkey and members of the board. I am Andrew Kui with the board's legal department, and with me today is Larry Mendel, also with the legal department, and Kevin Hanks with the business taxes and fee department, and we will be representing staff. So our position is that petitioner is personally liable as a responsible person for the unpaid liabilities of California Business Furnishings, CBF, and desk, chairs, and more, DCM. Of the 4 elements required to impose personal liability on a responsible person, petitioner only disputes that he was willful. Specifically, the contention is that although petitioner was a responsible person for both entities that knew the taxes were not being timely paid when due, Bridge Bank and supplier Haworth actively prevented him from using the sales tax reimbursement collected to pay the tax liabilities to the board. And in support, petitioner has provided the timeline, which you went over briefly a couple minutes ago. The department has a slightly different understanding of the timeline of pertinent events, and we've submitted our exhibit with the timeline documenting the evidence that we have available. And the evidence that we have available indicates that petitioner had the authority and the ability to pay the liabilities when those taxes became due and after they were due. First, the evidence shows that petitioner had control over 2 business bank accounts, one at Bridge Bank and one at County Bank, on and after the due date for payment of taxes. Specifically, although petitioner contends that Bridge Bank prevented him from paying the taxes by managing the collections and controlling the distributions from the bank account at Bridge Bank, the entities, CBF and DCM, also maintained a separate bank account at County Bank, which was not closed until March of 2009, and there is no evidence that the bank account at County Bank was ever subject to restrictions or controls imposed by any other creditor. Regarding Bridge Bank, the evidence shows that the existence of a lockbox agreement between February 2nd until February 23rd of 2009, and the reason was that there was an unpaid loan balance with Bridge Bank. The documentation also indicates that Bridge Bank collected payments during this period, February 2nd until February 23rd of 2009, when the loan was paid in full and the lockbox agreement ended. Regarding the creditor Haworth, it wasn't until March 23rd of 2009 that the vendor requested a, quote, a disbursement and collection process similar to your previous arrangement with Bridge Bank, emphasis on previous, and this is attached as an exhibit that we submitted. Thus, there is no evidence that the vendor Haworth or supplier Haworth exerted any control over the collection or disbursements of funds until sometime after March 23rd, 2009. The unpaid taxes at issue were all due on or before January 31st, 2009. That is the November prepayment for 2008, the third quarter 08 tax shortage, and the fourth quarter of 08 return. Despite having control over the bank accounts, the evidence indicates petitioner chose to use the sales tax reimbursement collected to pay himself and others instead of the board. Specifically, in the statements, the corporation's Statement of Financial Affairs, which petitioner signed under penalty of perjury and submitted to the bankruptcy court, petitioner reported that he paid himself and his wife a total of $250,000 in compensation for the period July 08 through March 09, and this is specifically listed as a withdrawal for salary in the bankruptcy filing. In addition, there was $8,700 paid to Fidelity Investments in March 2009, $7,500 in consulting fees to a turnaround manager in February 09 through May 09, and $4,300 to an attorney Overstreet and Associates in April and May of 09, and $95,000 to Blue Cross in January of 2009. Regarding the documentation for the remittance processing service agreement, also known as the lockbox agreement, which was submitted yesterday by petitioner, the concerns that we have and why we didn't feel this was sufficient to establish the requisite control was not met is that, one, the document is unsigned, it's not signed by any of the parties. Two, the document provided was incomplete. It specifically referenced that the terms and conditions are specified in Exhibits A and B to the document, and those were not provided to our for our review. Also, it also specifies that it will be effective at a later date to be agreed upon by the parties, provided certain conditions are met, and those and that later date was not provided, or the signed document showing when the effective date would be is not provided. And also did not include the underlying financing agreement requiring the lockbox arrangement. So basically, we would want to see all the documentation sufficient to show that the contentions that are being raised were actually imposed during the time frame that the taxes were due. And unfortunately, that documentation hasn't been provided to us yet, despite many requests for the documentation. So we concur with the Appeals Division's recommendation.
You have 5 minutes on rebuttal, sir.
Okay. There's, from what I've read of the responses and the evidence provided by the state in our conversation, it is not clear to the period that we're working under, or they thoroughly misunderstood it. I don't even see the supporting evidence. If I was going to look at it from an evidence, is where's the meat on the bone? I see the statement, and most specifically, that had to do with the timing, what the net effect of the lockbox was, and the timing of the lockbox. They made a comment about it being a February event, and it wasn't a February event. That's when it was closing out. To put into context, it has been three things to note. Both Hayworth and Ridgebank have not been. They're not helping the situation because they're clearly feeling vulnerable. Hayworth, when we went through this bankruptcy, on 4 or 5 occasions flew 2 lawyers from Michigan to be in a 15-minute meeting in Fresno. They made $10 to $15 million out of this that should have gone back to the estate to settle all the other vendors and such. The arrangements were Hayworth, where they took our new orders from the summer on and made them direct bill. So it was paid directly to Hayworth. They would have paid the sales tax, I would assume. They converted all of our existing orders from, and there's evidence to show that in our file, that our existing orders were converted from to a two-party check, Contract Interiors or California Business Furnishings and Hayworth. We could not sign the check and deposit it. At the end, in March, February, March, when Bridgebank was paid off, that all the monies went straight to Hayworth after that. There were trustees in place in March. Trustees had intercepted the mail, so they were intercepting any checks that happened to come in through the mail, and all that money went to Hayworth. We received none of it, not a dime from the trustees, not a dime from County Bank, other than the skeleton crew I'm talking about. And again, I will say in no uncertain terms, the reason the $250,000 was put on there as payment, we didn't get paid that money. That's what the money we didn't get paid. So I think the evidence doesn't show that we were stealing from the company. Quite the opposite. I was putting all of my assets in, my retirement account in. And the timing of the lockbox was, there's a document. Yes, it isn't executed, but it is there, and we finally found it. And one last thing I'll say, all of the evidence we're looking for, we finally found on like Sunday. It was in, I had some people, well, maybe it was Wednesday, but we couldn't get the lockbox, we couldn't get the backup drives open. And then eventually the emails opened. It was really difficult. It's old technology. You needed a specialist. So I did not go through everything. I went through and got the things that I thought I could show that these were our correspondence. You know, now given another week or 2 weeks, I mean, certainly I could go through the emails in more detail. I could, I doubt we have an executed copy, but there's all sorts of emails that would support, the ones that would support that Bridge Bank denied state board payments and other things like that, what we could pay and when, those were all encrypted and we didn't have the passcode. And again, nobody's helping, so I'm sure we could break the code, but I couldn't do it in a short period of time.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to lead on this. I happen to have some knowledge from my banking career as to what exactly Bridge Bank was. It was a factoring agent. Okay, oftentimes when companies have problems, we used to, at both Bank of America and Security Pacific prior, we did receivable financing, and we financed a certain percentage of. We also would finance a certain percentage of inventory. That was secured by the receivables and by the inventory. If a company has problems, of which many did in 2008, and by all admission, I was out of the business by then, if they have problems, then they need to look to a factoring agent, which in essence takes over all of their accounts and says, okay, we'll finance you at what really is a hard money lending rate, but we are totally secured and collateralized. We want you to take, as this document states, and this document is dated November 10th, 2008 is the effective date. We will take an assignment, in essence, of all of your receivables, and everything goes to our account, to our P.O. box. We clear it, and we determine what we pay. I think the Chapter 7 just made everything kind of get worse, but they were totally in control of anything that came into the company. I can guarantee you that. They don't do these types of loans unless they're going to get paid, and they're going to take their money first. So the fact that we have this lockbox agreement is, in my mind, evidence that there was such an animal. And the fact that their bank went belly up is not unusual. It was a small bank. Many banks actually collapsed or got taken over by receivership, and they had to sell off their accounts for pennies on the dollar. Somebody would take them and say, oh, it's like a collection agency. They took them and they had to recapitalize their banks or go away. But that did stop financing for many people in 2008, 2009, just cut it off, where they had an ongoing business and all of a sudden they didn't because they needed the financing for the cash flow purposes. And so the first thing, of course, is to pay your employees, try to keep things open, try to find other financing arrangements. And it looks like that's what they did with Bridge Bank. Whether he was sick or not, it was probably the only option available to them when his small bank collapsed. I do see on this an email from Walter Riley dated 1/23/09 that says Amy, and who is Amy?
Amy was the contact with Fidelity. They were doing our payroll and our 401k. On our last payroll, they released the payroll and funded our payroll. We did not send them because somehow confusion. We didn't send them in the employee taxes to go along with the closeout payroll. So the last payroll, December 19th, all the employees are getting their vacation, blah, blah, blah. Everyone got their check, but their payroll taxes were not funded by Fidelity because they didn't collect the money ahead of time. And at that point, Riley was trying to explain to her that we didn't have any control of the money to pay them, and she now became an ordinary creditor like everybody else because they missed their time, which was that day.
Well, that's what this says. Amy, thank you for speaking with me on the 22nd and for sending me the contract. The current situation is that Contract Interiors is attempting to free up cash flow from its lender. The lender has a lockbox arrangement, will not release cash to pay current employees, let alone pay any vendors other than sums, including Fidelity. The company engaged in a turnaround manager is working hard to get release of the funds out of the account. However, the lender is hanging pretty tough right now because its balance is declining at a very rapid rate. So it's, they're not doing business anymore. They are merely, the lender, be it Bridge Bank, is probably just trying to collect what it could.
And Riley's, I forgot to mention that his January date on that was, again, this was a November document, and it didn't start in February. He's referencing it in late January.
Okay. Yeah, we looked at this and looked at this and looked at this, not because I particularly knew, but because my staff was really unable to find any verification after the 3Q08. 3Q08, admittedly, this gentleman was in charge or, in control, but we did not find anywhere where he had the authority to pay. The business was closed, sales tax was collected, the petitioner was responsible, and he may have had knowledge of the tax due, but we did not find anywhere where he had the authority or the ability to pay the taxes. So my question for the department is, if Robin Hankins completed the sales tax returns and signed all the checks, why didn't we pursue her on a dual determination?
Robin, so we had discussions with the taxpayer during our investigation of who would be a responsible person, and at the time, petitioner said that he was the one that made the decisions for the company. We also inquired about his wife. He said that she had authority to pay, but he was directing the payments at the end of the business. And so we determined that we didn't have sufficient evidence to bill the other people based on his representations that he was the responsible person and his statement that he was the responsible person. If I could briefly address some of your other concerns.
Well, I think you're going to get an opportunity because I'm also going to refer you to item CC, which I've got here. It's marked for me, but it is the statement that you read, Statement of Financial Affairs, Attachment 3.B and 3.C, which is payments to creditors. It looks like it's from the bankruptcy case, 09-14578, Doc 1, page 118 of 136.
Yes.
Okay. It does acknowledge here that debtor borrowed and gave security interest to Bridge Bank within the past year. Bridge Bank was paid in full by a lockbox arrangement, which they would be. They wouldn't advance you any more than they knew they could collect, minus because they would advance a certain percentage of the receivables and then take a huge discount. That percentage would be moderated considerably so that they would be sure that they at least collected that. They would look at your agings, how you normally collected, how your vendors normally paid, and they would make a decision on their risk based on that, similar to a bank, but only with less, and they would take their fees up front, and they would take total control of your collections. And so it says Bridge Bank was paid in full by a lockbox arrangement. Payment was made as of February 2009. Collections were made to the lockbox, and Bridge Bank applied payments to its loans. Detail regarding these transactions attached here too. So it shows, there was a lockbox. It was there. They took control. That's acknowledged in the same agreement that you read. So I think it's very credible that there was a lockbox and that they paid themselves. I don't see where there's any verification that Mr. Davidian had control over the funds of the company at that time. So thank you. Go ahead, you respond.
Oh, yes, so there were a couple concerns, or a couple, I think, that you had, and I'd just like to briefly address that. So one was the county bank account closing in '08. It actually did not close, and I attached a newspaper article until 2009, February 2009, and at that point, the accounts were transferred to another bank, and petitioner reported that he closed out that account plus another account in March 2009. But regarding the lockbox agreement, the concerns that we had, and this is going back to the Statement of Financial Affairs, and it's referring, as like the last sentence that you just read is the detail regarding these transactions is attached here too, and it shows details for the transactions listed are from February 2nd to February 23rd. And if you look at the lockbox agreement that the petitioner provided as support, and I mean, clearly there was an agreement in place. The question of when the agreement came into place is really the $64,000 question here. And if you look at his documentation, the lockbox agreement, the payment processing agreement, it says that it's dated November 10th, but it says it will become effective at a later date agreed upon by the parties, provided certain conditions are met. So the November 10th date is not the date that it became effective. In addition, the parties had to meet certain conditions and agree to a date. So then that date is later on, and that's why we really thought it's important that we have the full agreement. The agreement specified that the terms and conditions are in Exhibits A and B attached. Those exhibits were not attached. And as an example of why we think that it's important to have the full documentation, we actually have a copy of a financing agreement between Bridge Bank and another entity, and it specifies that there will be a lockbox collection service, and it specifies a remittance processing and service agreement, the lockbox agreement, which is the exact same agreement that petitioner entered into. And then it also specifies in this document that the borrower will pay all taxes, including sales taxes, when due, and deliver satisfactory evidence of payment to lender if requested. Therefore, we want to see the full documentation to ensure that for example, in the other documentation, it doesn't specify that the petitioner would be responsible for showing the amount of taxes due so that they could be paid to the board. And that's why we wanted to see the full documentation for the agreement and when it went into effect.
Okay, then let me see, this lockbox agreement seems to be the main bone of contention. And when we were initially working on this last week, I think the department was claiming that there wasn't one, or they couldn't verify that there was one. Now you're saying you can't verify the timing of it, and so I understand that. Let me go to the taxpayer, Mr. Davidian. When were you able, and how were you able to produce this document?
So Sunday, effectively, actually Monday morning, I got the emails opened by a service. And I went into Robin Hankins' emails. She gave, we had her passcodes. And that's where I found on her Outlook, one of her boxes is Bridge Bank. There were 384 correspondents there. That was one of them. It had 8 or 9 attachments. I looked at 2 of them. They looked exactly the same. I did not open all 9 of them because I was obviously looking for the smoking guns, if you will. That looked to me like it was. I did not notice the attachments weren't there, but everything else around it says the evidence is that, and I can tell you based on what I've read, and I did not produce because I didn't give you all the minutia, right? Supporting documents may be a mistake on my part, but what I didn't tell you was I know that date now, the execution date, because there were some emails exchange that were not secured that said it was like around the 18th, 19th, or 20th. And from that date on.
Of December?
Of November.
Of November.
Of November.
Okay. I think, members, you can certainly have your own discussion. I'm just letting you know that I really think that in a case of a 6829 that is old, admittedly old, and where there's a company that's been bankrupt and a company that's chosen a factoring agent and the company kind of went out, if there's any possible way that we can maybe, because I think the gentleman's been very, very honest, the taxpayer's been very honest, he's tried to produce as much as he could, And I think, given the time, he might be able to go and produce the whole lockbox agreement. And I think that's really what the whole case is this lockbox agreement. So given that this was one of many emails, and I think, did you not, how did you have access to these emails that you didn't have before?
I didn't know I had.
Did you have an old server, or what was the,
Yeah.
how was?
Well,
how
no,
did
the
that
server,
work?
the server was, we had a server, we lost it, we lost the internet. We had backed up some of the stuff into backup disk drives. And I just did not know where they were and finally found them in a storage area. And I
Okay.
looked and I looked and I looked, and trust me, I looked. That's why I was asking. I mean, I really looked, and they were in something that they shouldn't have been in. And when I found them, it was like, oh my gosh, you know.
Here they are, they're
I was
gold.
going one last go, and so that was about 10 days ago, and 9 days ago, whatever it was, and then we got them over to someone to open them, and again, I would be happy, truly happy to spend more time with the assistance of the state to go through those documents, say, here they are, you read them. You've got more technology ability than I do, because I frankly, I have no resources. You know, I mean, I put all of my money in to help close the business, all of my retirement. I'm, you know, living on Social Security and a little bit of work, period. I went from here to here, and it's okay, but I don't have the resources to have a
hire
lawyer,
or
to do this thing. So I'd be happy to work with you guys and show you and say, open this up, unlock it. I'll read it with you. And if it says something different, that's what it is. But I know it doesn't. All the supporting evidence is going to say.
Okay,
that
I'd like to recommend 30-30-30, and
Can we participate in this
you may, but that's kind of where I'm going with it. No, you may, but this is, it's a 6829, and I got this data, you know, we got this data late, and I started looking into it, and I thought that my input might be valuable to the board. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
I just have I'm not disputing the 30-30-30, but I just want to get kind of clarification to the taxpayer. Did you say you have a copy of the signed agreement? Or are you just saying you have these various emails?
I have, there are different documents that were alluded to or spoken of here. I believe I have an executed agreement with, I know it's Hayworth and myself, that collateralizes everything. I mean, there's little pieces. I don't believe I have I don't know. There's 7 of the emails I did not open up. She had 9 attachments of, it looks like the same document. One of them might have been signed. I did not open up all 9 of them.
Okay.
The ones I have that I did open up were not signed, but they were, but there's all sorts of supporting emails alluding to that the lockbox was in effect.
Okay, thank you, This helpful. To the department, in your exhibits, you're indicating that the order of events is that the lockbox was in effect February 2nd, 09 to February 23rd, 09. Will you please walk me through why that is your position?
So that is the earliest, February 2nd is the earliest date that we have corroboration of a lockbox agreement. So then that's, and on the Statement of Financial Affairs discussing the lockbox arrangement.
Excuse me, give me the exhibit and the page number.
It's page number 118, and it's exhibits to page 1, exhibit 2, page 1 of the document that I submitted to you, to the board. And in that page, it is talking about the lockbox arrangement, and it says that payment was made as of February 2009. Collections were made to the lockbox, and Bridge Bank applied payment to the loans. Detail regarding these transactions is attached here too, and the detail regarding the transactions, the earliest date available was February 2nd, so that's the earliest date that we could corroborate. Of course, if the petitioner is able to provide, you know, the financing agreement, the lockbox agreement, including attachments, attachments A and B, exhibits A and B, that would be very helpful for us to, you know, to determine the correct liability.
Okay, that's okay. So that's why we might go 30-30-30.
Mr. Renner?
Yeah, just a couple of quick thoughts here. Again, we're dealing with willfulness here in terms of liability. So obviously, knowledge and ability is a big part of that discussion. I also find a big part of that discussion is credibility of the taxpayer trying to figure out dates and times and whatnot. To kind of back up a little bit, you were selling $1 million worth of furniture a week?
Yes, sir.
For what, for many years? Is that, how, tell me.
It's a great story. Started on the kitchen table with a solar calculator. Ended up winning Malcolm Baldwin's Awards for Best Operating Dealer in the nation multiple times. West of the Mississippi, we were fifth, sixth largest dealer. Formed out of Fresno, added multiple locations. And we trained people, we cared about people. We had huge market shares. I took over San Diego that was shrinking. It had like a 2 or 3%. We grew it in 3 years to about a 13%, and we had orders in hand that would have taken it up to about a 35%. Anything over 15% is huge. In our hometown, Fresno, that we were there for 25 years, the last 4 or 5 years, we were stuck pretty much at 50% of market share. 6 other companies splitting up 50%.
So that was your business.
That was our business.
That was your business.
Office furniture.
And as a result of that, you collected lots of sales tax.
That's correct.
I mean, on a calculation.
$3 to $4 million a year.
Yeah.
So
tens of millions of dollars.
Correct.
Of sales tax was collected and remitted to the state of California.
And remitted on time.
On time. Let me ask about the taxpayer's history. Any audit issues in the past? Any problems? Anything that we've identified?
I'm aware of 2 audits. I think the most recent one was '06, and that was no work done. The one before that, there was an issue with bad debts, I believe. It was a small issue, though.
Small issues?
Yeah.
But no big issues within his business operation?
I know of. If you didn't find it, I'll tell it to you.
I'll get to you.
Okay.
So nothing that was significant, just operational issues, no reason to, in terms of how he operated his business, nothing significant?
Right. I briefly reviewed the prior history, not in great detail, but I didn't see any concerns.
Okay. Go ahead.
I mean, there was one in the 90s where one or two of my salespeople thought churches were nonprofits.
Mm-hmm.
So that bit me on an audit, and I'm going, what did accounting have to say about that when that came through? And there was an assumption that churches were nonprofits, so they didn't pay sales tax.
Okay.
So we stopped that. We paid, and we paid the fine, and that was back in the 90s, and we learned a very difficult lesson, and we were very intentful as we could be, and we operated probably in California at least 25 different counties, so we had 25 different tax rates, and sometimes 35 because of the city-county thing.
Let me ask you, in terms of the back to the department, is he responsible for providing absolute proof or preponderance of proof? What's the level that he needs to be able to provide?
In the 6829 case, the department has the preponderance of evidence standard to show the 4 elements.
Okay, so that's all the factors together, right?
Yes.
Not a single document that just says, oh, he's in the clear here or he's responsible here. It's basically all the testimony, all the documents. It's the whole kind of enchilada, if you will. It creates the liability or non-liability.
Right.
I should say. Okay.
Could I?
Well, go ahead.
I want to make sure I understood that. I think what I'm hearing is that and I wish I would have known this way back when, because I could have really framed my answers to be, I was giving truthful answers.
Right, no. Let me tell you, the reason I asked that question.
a little differently because I would have differentiated between what does I'm in control mean.
Well, the reason I asked that question is because, again, people say things in the midst of an audit or say some things, or they're responsible, I'm not responsible, they're not responsible, I'm responsible, but not necessarily concluding to that point in regards to that means that I have liability. At that point, and just those discussions. But the reason I make that point is there's a lot of information here, and I just don't, at this point, I hesitate trying to find the one document, the one issue, when it is that we need to be able to look at a preponderance of things, including, I think, the credibility of the taxpayer, the history of the taxpayer, along with then issues of materials and whatnot that would then help build that argument. Let me ask you one question about another bank account, because that was kind of new to me, and I just want to ask about that. The county bank.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what county bank was and why.
So
what that
county
was.
bank, for a number of years, we had worked with I won't name the big guys' names, but there were a couple of them, that it was very difficult to be in a local Fresno town and deal with bankers, so to speak, and with all due respect. So I developed a relationship with Tom Hawker, who was the president of County Bank of Merced. They were, he would meet with me every month. I'd show him our monthly financials update, give me some advice. I was trying to do the things of work with your banker, learn how to grow the business, do the right things, see if there's a problem coming. And so that's where they came from. We were with them a number of years. When they closed down in March, we had.
In March of?
March of '09.
Okay.
But it was the bank, the government, the feds had come down sometime in the summertime to take over control of the bank.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I called Tom and said, hey, Tom, what you guys are delaying and that's when the payments, they took cash flow, $3 million out of our business. I said, what's going on? And well, he had just gotten fired like 3 or 4 days before.
Mm-hmm.
So I lost, any kind of conversation. It's curious to me, I know we left a little bit of money, hundreds of dollars, maybe $1,000 or something like that, to cover any float or checks that might come in, but we left County Bank in, late third quarter, early fourth quarter. I think it was of '08. I think it was in third quarter of '08. My notes say that it was in July or August, actually.
You were not paying any of these bills out of that bank?
No. They were floater checks, and
you were not
to my
depositing
knowledge,
any money into that bank?
No. We did one wire transfer, and so whatever, this is news to me, we had any money in there after July or August, other than a little bit of float.
Okay, what do we know about County Bank?
The latest check that we had was for $59,000, and that was in October 30th, 2008.
When was it?
October 30th, 2008.
From Bridge Bank?
This was for a contract.
Go ahead, hang on. Okay,
I'm sorry.
I'll ask you. Go ahead. So tell me about the bank, tell me the deposit we found.
So basically, when we were doing the investigation for 6829, we had sent out letters to the suppliers and asked them for payments, and one of the vendors, a couple of them had attached copies of the payment history, including the checks that were paid from Contract Interiors or from the taxpayer, the corporations. And the most recent one was for $59,000, and that was from Contract Interiors to, and that was in October 30th, 2008, and it was paid to, I believe, Ironwood Manufacturing.
So it was a payment out? I'm sorry.
Oh, it was the entities that issue paying a supplier, and the supplier being paid was Ironwood.
Okay.
So they paid $59,000 to Ironwood in October 30th.
Any other, so I guess, again, they're doing $1 million a week. That's the extent of did we find lots of transactions or very few transactions?
We had a number of other transactions and payment histories. I just copied a couple of checks for you as an exhibit. I didn't include all the documentation.
So you have a number total or estimate?
I have total.
I'm trying to find out how active the business was in that particular bank. How much they were moving, where that money came from that bank and.
Oh, I see. As far as breaking it down into the specific bank accounts, the other vendors didn't, not all the vendors provided copies of checks, so then I can't specify which bank account it would have been.
And we can't get to this bank to find out what happened?
I'm not sure.
Huh?
We could contact the bank. I was going to note what's displayed in the department's exhibits are these 3 checks.
Okay. So we don't really know exactly the activity of the bank.
But I'd also
go ahead, I'll let taxpayers start.
Yeah, I was not aware we were doing anything. The only thing I can think of is that, and I'll ask Robin and I'll get clarity on it, but was that if we changed banks, all of our banking was primarily, hundreds of checks a week was primarily done with Bridge Bank. In the transition, we had to notify our existing customers all of them, to mail new checks to the lockbox.
Okay.
Some of them might have got to County Bank, and instead of transferring the money to County Bank to Bridge Bank and then writing the check, maybe she wrote a couple of vendors, but it was in a period when we still had control of the money.
Okay, let me just ask a couple, in regards to Hayworth. Hayworth just was getting, basically buying and selling the furniture
They were a
around you.
manufacturer of about 25%.
And they were billing and receiving.
They would do business with us three ways. Originally.
But how about during this period?
During this period, they had many large accounts, millions of dollars, Northrop Grumman and guys like that, Los Alamos, tens of millions of dollars, direct bill. It was a bill with, Hayward's a $1 billion a year company. They're a manufacturer, and they don't direct sell. They use dealers like us, but they don't have a bank loan either. They've got plenty of money. So they would be the note carrier, if you will, the risk taker with large corporations. So they did direct bills, and then they'd pay us back service fees.
Okay.
Then they did two-party checks, and then at the end, they got paid through whatever was collected through the trustees.
Okay, let me ask just the last thought and question. The issue of some better document in regards to the lockbox arrangement. Do you believe you have that?
I believe I have a number of supporting other emails that, given enough time and maybe some assistance, we could really get to the heart of the evidence.
Okay. Here I guess where I'm coming from is certainly, in terms of a credible taxpayer. I think with it, I could only describe as a stellar history in regards to collection and remittance. And caught in the midst of two big problems. Number one, bank failures, and also then a very bad economy. And so it's kind of why I'm trying to figure out in this process then, how much we need, what is the issue we need to deal with here? How much of this evidence do we have which actually show that he is indeed the responsible party? And again, looking through the filter of both his history, the evidence to which he has provided, and certainly if he's got something that's more specific than in regards to that lockbox, that's probably a fundamental issue in this discussion. So that's where I'd be coming from. If he's got that more information is needed, I'm glad to wait that out for him. Thank you.
By the way, here's the information.
Okay, thank you.
I'd be happy to give it to you right now.
No, don't turn over everything. That is never smart.
Okay, thank you.
If you turn into a fishing expedition.
The truth is the truth,
I know, we believe you. Mr. Horton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, in that regard, I certainly appreciate any efforts to collaborate evidence and to have collaborating evidence, documents, and so forth. I think that's fundamentally important to any audit process. A couple of questions, if you will. Who negotiated the lockbox agreement?
That was a conversation with Hayworth, with Bridge Bank, with Robin Hankins, and myself.
You were involved in the negotiations?
I was involved in many of the conversations, not all the details at all. I did not get involved in the day-to-day. There was a Tim Wells at Hayworth, Robin Hankins, and Bridge Bank would have lots of conversations, and then periodically they would bring me in and somebody else from Hayworth.
Yeah. The reason I ask the question is because the date and time of the lockbox agreement becomes important. And I too believe that a properly negotiated lockbox agreement would preclude the lack of willfulness during the time that the lockbox agreement is in place. The requirement there is a properly executed lockbox agreement relative to sales tax. The inherent challenge is that whenever anybody loans funds, and particularly even in a lockbox agreement, they're concerned about accounts receivables. They're concerned about funds coming in, and such that this was a liability that existed prior to the lockbox agreement.
No.
No.
At least that's my understanding. Department, when was the liability?
The liabilities at issue are the tax shortage for the third quarter of 2008, which would have been due, I think, June, July, August, September 31st or 30th, and then there's
September
the prepayment.
30th of the year is kind of important here.
Right, and the November prepayment, which would be due.
Again, let me just have you, no, I want your testimony, but I want a complete testimony. I don't want a date and a month. I need the year. So September, you want to start over?
Just the primary liability here was due January 31st, 2009 for the fourth quarter of 2008.
January 3rd, and when was the lockbox agreement entered into?
And that's the concern that we would like additional.
The accounting in the bankruptcy filings shows the lockbox from 2/1/2009 to 2/23/2009. And that's what we're going on, is that is the detail provided in the bankruptcy code showing, or in the bankruptcy filing, that those were the dates of the lockbox.
I'm going to go to appeals.
Yeah, we don't know that it wasn't in place earlier. That's just all we got.
And for those reasons, I would support a 30-30-30, but I'm going to go to appeals later, but I just want to get them ready to sort of take a look at the evidence that we have relative to the lockbox and the information in there as to the liability to pay the sales tax. The agency has, during the period of the lockbox, the agency has several options to them in order to protect the interests of the state and make sure that you collect these funds that taxpayers have paid over to a business, taxpayers paid over to a business under the understanding that the business in turn is not going to pay their salaries out of that taxes, not going to pay their bills out of those taxes, but it's going to remit that to the state of California for the purpose of going into the state's general fund, of which cities receive somewhere around 52% of these funds. Schools, education, and so forth have been denied these funds. That's the process. So I'm very empathetic when you have a situation where sales for resales, for example, taxes were never collected. They never collected the tax. So then, I'm empathetic with that. But when they collect the taxes, then remit it, I think we ought to sort of follow the law. And so the options would have been to, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to state this, you answer, let me know whether or not there's anything else, or I missed something, or I misstated something. Would have been to put a keeper in, which would have collected the cash. We don't have to honor these factoring agreements. Put a keeper in, as the sales tax comes in, we pick it up. We pick it up, put it in, collect it, and so forth. The other option would have been to lien the bank accounts. Other option would have been to put some restrictions on their accounts receivables.
Yeah.
We could have filed a number of court actions and so forth. I only point this out because anyone that's lending money and not in many factoring agreements, at least the ones I've observed, it's been a lot over the last 30 years of dealing with this, is that they want to make sure that those taxes are paid. Mm-hmm. Because if it doesn't, then it interrupts their flow of revenue that they've entered into this agreement. Because the agency is not required to honor these factoring agreements. And so we can actually take the funds, but we didn't. But that's the motivation behind factoring agreements and those lenders making sure that these taxes are paid.
Is that it?
So, no, I want to go to Mr. Njija. Have you had a chance to review the factoring agreement, at least the information that you have?
Not the factoring agreement. That's part of the problem. We'd like to see that data. A couple of points that I wanted to make regarding that is the timing is crucial. We've got payments prior to the alleged date of the lockbox agreement. The business is in business, doesn't close out till June of '09, so there's payments that could happen after. The lockbox itself may or may not require the payment of sales taxes. The lockbox agreement is crucial because it goes to the fourth element of willfulness. And as you noted, if it's properly drafted and literally you don't have access to the funds and no control, and you've tried to say, please pay the sales tax, they say, no, we won't, then you're not willful under 6829. But the evidence we're seeing is that the lockbox agreement stopped on February 29th. There's 3 more months that the business is in business with knowledge of the liability and with funds. And during and after and before, during, and after the payment of the lockbox, there's salaries paid and payments going out. So if someone's trying to show they weren't willful due to either the lack of funds or the lack of the authority, we need that agreement to be able to reach that conclusion, and we don't have that yet.
All right, so I would,
I'm sorry.
no, and let me commend you as well. I mean, I think you ran a very successful business. I think you collected from a lot of taxes from California taxpayers, and you remitted those taxes to the state, and that the state of California and everyone who benefits from that should be very much appreciative of that. To that end, you know, I believe there should be a level of leniency to the extent that we can, and would be supportive of a 30-30-30 agreement, although the facts seems to indicate that even though the due date for the return, the taxes are fundamentally due when they're collected. So that whole 3 months when they're collected, theoretically, the obligation is to set aside the revenue. I understand that taxes in California are not held in trust, which makes those funds not due to the state until the point you file those returns. But the obligation is established at the point that the taxes are given to you, to set it aside and report it. And also enter into a factoring agreement. I truly appreciate protecting salaries and other factors, but I also believe that it would have been important to negotiate a factoring agreement that protects the company from the Board of Equalization being a little more aggressive than they were. And they weren't because someone wisely filed an appeal and didn't allow their liability to go final. I get that. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. But I still think because of the unknown, it would have been smart to negotiate that and include that in the agreement.
Trust me, if I would have known about liens and had it as even a thought, I would have in a nanosecond.
Yeah, I think the other thing, members, I mean, I think the individual here in front of us is credible. I mean, I'm sort of struggling with who has the greater liability here. I mean, I believe there's some liability on his part. I also believe there's liability on everyone else who negotiated the transaction. And maybe there was a lack of knowledge of the exposure here. When you're in a negotiation, you have 4 or 5 other lead individuals. Maybe there's a dominant personality, not only dominant personality, but dominant from a legal standing as well in the decision-making process. Did that occur? Is there someone that could have overridden you? I mean, said no?
The manufacturer was directing all the traffic because at that moment, of the millions we shipped every month, 4 million a week, they would be a third to 40% of it and effectively would shut us down instantly, you know, if they didn't ship it. So they had a treasury. Unfortunately, I'll tell you the context, they have the money. I will tell you that right now. They collected millions and millions of dollars, some of which I'm sure they pay taxes on and some of which I know they did not. I don't have any evidence. I can't prove it, but I can prove
My apologies, but they
were sales.
Who are they?
Hayworth.
The company.
And, you know, my fault.
No, the other, yeah, I know.
Yeah, Tim Wells worked for Hayworth. Hayworth has a big stick. And I had a 20-year relationship with the treasurer who died prematurely of cancer in like a 90-day period. We did a handshake deal. We never had any problems. And then new regime comes in, and I thought I was dealing with the culture of a handshake deal, and I was not. And then at the end, it was heavy-handedness and one-sided, win-lose. I lost.
At any point during this process, did you communicate to Hayward and the factoring individuals who lent the money that you thought that they should pay the taxes? Or is that now in hindsight?
I communicated a lot of things to those guys. I don't remember whether I had a specific conversation on sales tax. They fought for 45 days over subordinated debt when we were trying to close the deal. It was just a power play that we lost. And I'm telling you, they collected millions and millions of dollars,
So
tens of millions.
Hayward collected millions of dollars.
Millions of dollars, some of which I am absolutely sure they paid taxes on, and some of it, I just know by the process, they did not. They have the big stick. And Bridge Bank took the benefit. I mean, at the end, there was $100,000 sitting in Bridge Bank. They took us fees at the end, small print in our document. I didn't know.
Were any of your customers aware that you were having these challenges?
The minute we sent, if I was any kind of a larger employer at all, and I get something that says lockbox on it, that immediately is a major red flag. So most of my time was spent with those customers, telling them, I think it's going to be okay, here's what's going on.
Did any of the customers any of those customers not pay their bills?
I couldn't tell you. We had a number of people that never paid their bill. Some of them were years old, and we just carried them on the books because we weren't paying attention, And some of them, I'm sure at the end said, hey, why would I bother?
Yeah,
but I
agree.
didn't have that conversation with any of them.
Did the department take that under consideration?
Yes, to clarify, and we attached this as an exhibit, the petitioner deducted an amount for bad debts in excess of the total amount of accounts receivables owed by, I believe, about $100,000, and we allowed that deduction. I'd also note that most of the account receivables...
You allowed all of that?
We did not audit it, we just allowed it as filed, and I'd note that the majority of those accounts receivables were owed by government entities.
Okay.
Let me clarify, though.
No further questions, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I have some information that I would like to share, but my WhatsApp is not quite working. I can't believe it. It keeps my messages are disappearing or I can't read them. But let me see if I can, for some reason I can't make this go down and I want to drive it down. But we have on Iris, when the company closed, and it was in '08. Lisa, quit sending me stuff. I need to see what you sent. And that's what we have on Iris. So Mr. Ng just said that the account closed, and I believe it was in '09. And that's not what we show on Iris. The permits were canceled. I also have information here from Hayworth that I understand that I have that probably the others are not sharing, that shows that Hayworth was billing the receivables directly, and so your company was not involved in the end when Hayworth was there.
Right.
So there's a lot here, and I do believe he's totally credible. I don't see that. I'm almost hesitant to even send this back because I'm afraid of how much longer and how much financing it would take to try to exhume the documents. I would love to see this lockbox, but I think there's so much documentation here that from 2008 that we've been able to exhume. So
I'm going to make a motion for the taxpayer here. I think the credibility issue is important. I think the preponderance of evidence shows that he was in circumstances that he did not have control, and also in terms of his records. So I'd make a motion for the taxpayer.
do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just a couple of questions, please. I just want to, earlier you testified about your salary. The records indicated that you received $250,000 in salary. You didn't receive those funds.
No, that was a claim as a creditor to the bankruptcy. It was not funds that we received.
So you made a claim?
There is no evidence that we received 250 because that was a claim in the bankruptcy as a creditor.
And what happened with the bankruptcy?
The bankruptcy was, the trustees settled it with Hayworth and sent them all the money. There was no money left over after paying Hayworth.
You got nothing?
I got nothing.
The employees get paid?
No, 2 or 3 of the employees got paid some money, and a couple of did not get paid. It was when they were under the $10,000 number. Most of the employees we had, there were a few commissions that trailed through, and a few of them 2 or 3 of them got paid, and the rest did not.
Did all the vendors get paid?
None of the vendors got paid. Nobody got paid anything. State Board was listed on the trustee also with these taxes, and they did not get paid.
No, I'm in the lockbox process.
Oh, that was the skeleton crew to close down the business. Of 150 people, there were 7 left that helped, and then 5 left, and then 3 left to clean up the warehouse, if you will, and finish the punch list and to send out the bills and collect the money. And that happened over a 10 or 12-week period. So lockbox trustee Hayworth, that's who had all the money. And Hayworth has it all today.
All right.
There's a motion and a second.
Just one comment, Madam Chair. I'm going to object to the motion, and I just want to say I'm sympathetic towards the taxpayer, but I would like to have seen the completed, executed lockbox agreement. And since if it passes, we won't have that opportunity. So I don't have enough credible information in front of me to agree to it.
We do have a copy of the subordination agreement with Hayworth. It's dated November of 2008. I understand that's in our file.
Yep.
So anyway, well, there's a motion, there's a second. There is an objection. Please call the roll. Thank you.
Chairwoman Harkey?
Aye.
Mr. Renner?
Aye.
Mr. Horton?
No.
Ms. Ma?
Aye.
Ms. Stowers?
No.
Motion carries.
You won.
I did, and I will do my best to find the evidence, just because, actually, as hard as this has been, and thank you for your time, it has been a good process, because it revalidated. I had to go through a process of who was I then and who am I now, and are they the same? And frankly, it turned out that that was true. And then it got to be a little bit of a, well, whatever happens, happens. I can't control that. But I really kind of got over the hurt through the process. That was my mourning period, and got into the healing part. And I commit to you, I will try to find the enough supporting kindling and smoke.
Thank you.
To make everyone feel a little better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay? And if you want to,
Yeah. Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Just because I don't want to burden the taxpayer with that responsibility, I would encourage the staff to advise the taxpayer of his lack of obligation to do that.
I just told him it's okay.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I want to do it.
That's the kind of guy he is. He wants to prove it. He wants his name cleared with everybody. I get it. Okay, thank you. Okay, we do have a hard break at 12:15 per Member Horton, correct?
No, I didn't ask.
I thought we had lunch.
I understand that that's not necessary at this time, then we can go all the way through with the meeting.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Okay.
We only have one more case, right?
Okay, yes, one more case. I'm sorry, but that was in my notes.
Appreciate it.
So I just wanted to be sure I was right. Okay,
that was
Ms.
the
Richmond,
case.
will you please introduce the next item?
Our last hearing for today is C4 Stephen F. Casey. Please come forward.
Oh, this is the same case, right?
We should be able to get there. Oh. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Anjija, will you please introduce the matters?
Madam Chair and members, the appeal before you involves one unresolved issue, which is whether petitioner's purchase and use of a vessel in California is subject to use tax.
Thank you. Sir, you have 10 minutes to present your case. Introduce yourself first by name, and then we'll go to the department, which will also have 10 minutes, and then you will have 5 minutes to rebut.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Stephen Casey from Modesto, California. This case, as you know, is
You
about
want to speak up to the mic a little bit? There you
my
go.
buying a boat and whether it's a California boat or not. I retired from the county of Stanislaus at the end of '09 with the plan of buying a boat and sailing it down to St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. For the last 20 years before my retirement, I did a sport called triathlon. I went down to St. Croix many times to compete in a triathlon they had down there every May. So I got used to the island, and I loved the island. Anyway, I retired in, like I said, at the end of '09. I spent 2010 in large part looking for a boat to buy. And I found what I thought was the perfect boat in Seattle. And I bought it in April of 2011. I left it with the seller for a month and then went up there at the end of May to bring it down to California, to San Francisco Bay, with a crew that the seller was getting together for me. I was not a sailor. I'm really not yet, I suppose. But I in preparation for this retirement venture, I took sailing classes in the San Francisco Bay Area, and so I went up to get the boat at the end of May, and with the crew, we spent a week sailing around the Puget Sound, and then in about 10 days after that, we sailed it down from in the open ocean down to San Francisco Bay, which took about 10 days roughly. I don't know. It was. But anyway, it was an eye-opener coming down, sailing in the Puget Sound. I was really never in control of the boat because I had a very experienced crew with me, and I was learning. They were teaching me things as we went. Coming down the open ocean was an eye-opener because it was kind of rough, rougher than I imagined. With the swells coming in from the Pacific, from the northwest. Anyway, I get down to San Francisco, and the plan is a lifelong friend of mine is in Charleston, California. John Guthrie was going to sail with me to St. Croix. Oh, I forget. I did, upon buying the boat, had it surveyed, had the boat re-registered from Anacortes, Washington to St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands, and had the enumeration put on the boat. And at the same time, I had the name changed from the previous owner of Autumn Mist to my name of Liberation 2. Anyway, I get down to San Francisco. I talk it over with John, somewhat stunned at the immensity of what we're about to do. We thought that we would get a crew together. We did have several sailors that we had talked to about going, and a couple of my friends in Modesto were not ocean sailors, but they were sailors. They owned boats, smaller boats, and they wanted to go. This was a great thing. Anyway, so I told John that it was pretty pretty eye-opening, and he wasn't any more of a sailor than me. So we deliberated on this thing, and we decided at last to wait for the Baja Ha Ha rally, which is in October. Originally, we thought we would be out of there by July. On the way down from Seattle, we had a electrical crisis. Everything went dead. The batteries were gone, and we were dead in the water for a couple of days. But we had, like I said, I had experienced people on the boat. They took some batteries offline. They got the thing working once they got the dead batteries removed. Down in San Francisco, I had all new batteries put in, and they had to dig out a bigger box for more amperage. I wasn't going to have that happen again in the open ocean. So I got that done. I got the refrigeration system in the boat, which also went out on the way down. I got that replaced. I got several other little things done with the boat, nothing major. It didn't have to be pulled out of the water. It was all just contracting with an electrician, with a refrigeration, getting lights and getting some shackles and things for the boat. The big decision was waiting until October, which was, 2 or 3 months longer than the plan. So John was okay. He's retired. There was a sailor from Charleston he was the problem, because he was a very experienced captain, and I really wanted him to be on the boat, but he had scheduling issues, and ultimately we got him. He met us down in San Diego. He just couldn't match the time to get from San Francisco Bay to San Diego, where the Baja Ha Ha departed. So that was pretty much it. I got a crew of 4 people with a potential 5th person if somebody dropped out, and we did. We left San Francisco Bay. In the interim, to help myself out, I hired a guy who worked at a sailing school there at the Olympic Peninsula, which is near Berkeley. And on the weekends, I would drive over, and he would, help me out with maneuvering and with just boat things, getting it tanked up at the diesel place and all that. So I was getting my confidence, and we were all set for this thing. It was a daunting adventure for novices, but we did have 2 experienced guys with us on the boat. And anyway, so we left. We got on the Baja Ha Ha rally. It went down to Cabo San Lucas. 2 of the guys left us and flew back to work. They weren't retired like John and I. And 3 of us continued on to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. It took us almost a year and a half to get there. We laid off in several places. We laid over in Puerto Vallarta for a good 6 weeks. Went home, flew home to Modesto, flew back. We did this again in the southern end of Mexico. We laid over in Costa Rica, I believe. Well, we weren't there for that long. Anyway, we had about 4 substantial layovers. That's why it took so long. All the while, our destination is St. Croix. There was never any intention for me to use this boat in California. I only wanted it for the tropics. I wanted to use it in the Caribbean, where I had been going for years for vacation and for my triathlon. So there was no intent whatsoever to use this as a California boat. And when I got down to St. Croix in April of 2013, I registered the boat as with down there. I paid a guy to put in a mooring in Christiansted Harbor, which is where I was at, and that's where the boat remains. It's a Caribbean boat. That's why I bought it, to just fool around in the islands, and I never intended to be a California sailor or to use it in California waters. I was delayed for a couple of months. That was basically due to what I thought was a good safety consideration, and to accommodate the scheduling of my crew on the departure dates. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to the department. Please introduce yourself for the record. You also have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairwoman Harkey and members of the board. I'm Kevin Smith from the board's legal department. With me today is Lawrence Mendel, also from the legal department. I'm Kevin Hanks from the business tax and fee department. We will be representing staff. The department concurs with the appeals division recommendation to deny the petition. Under Revenue and Taxation Code Section 6201, use tax applies to the storage, use, or other consumption in the state of tangible personal property purchased for use in the state. Use includes the exercise of any right or power over tangible personal property incident to the ownership of that property. And storage includes any keeping or retention of the property in the state for any purpose except sale in the regular course of business. Under Section 6248, it is rebuttably presumed that a vessel was acquired for storage, use, or other consumption in this state if the vessel was purchased by a California resident, first functionally used outside of California, and then brought into California within 12 months of the purchase date. The presumption that the vessel was purchased for use in California may be rebutted by documentary evidence that the vessel was purchased for use outside the state during the first 12 months of ownership. Additionally, with respect to transactions covered by the 12-month test, a vessel brought into California exclusively for the purpose of repair, retrofit, or modification is not deemed to have been acquired for storage, use, or other consumption in this state if the repair, retrofit, or modification is performed by a licensed repair facility. Here, the undisputed facts show that the vessel was purchased outside of California on approximately May 2nd, 2011. It was first functionally used outside California and subsequently brought into California on or about June 10th, 2011. This is within 12 months of the purchase date. The vessel remained in California until October 24th, 2011. This is a total time of approximately 136 days. It is undisputed that at the time of purchase, petitioner was a California resident. Further, it is undisputed that the vessel was stored and or used in Emeryville, California from July 2011 to October 10th, 2011. Additionally, during the vessel's time in Emeryville, petitioner claims to have performed repairs on the vessel, but has not provided any records of those repairs or evidence those repairs were completed by a licensed repair facility as required by law. Finally, from October 10th, 2011 to October 22nd, 2011, the vessel was sailed from Emeryville to San Diego. The boat was then in San Diego until the first leg of the Baja Haha started with a kickoff boat parade in San Diego Bay on October 24th, 2011. Regarding his use of the vessel in California, petitioner stated in a memorandum dated July 1, 2015, that he was in no hurry and that this was not a commercial boat delivery, but rather a retirement experience. Therefore, because the vessel was first functionally used outside of the state, then brought into California within 12 months of that date by a California resident, and then was both used and stored in California for approximately 136 days, the only conclusion we can reach is that the purchase and use of the vessel is subject to tax in California. While petitioner presented evidence that the vessel was subsequently sailed to the U.S. Virgin Islands, the evidence he has provided, such as his statement in the July 1, 2015 memorandum, established that he purchased the vessel with the intent of using it in California during the first 12 months of ownership, and did, in fact, use and store the vessel in California for approximately 136 days in both Emeryville and San Diego. Finally, in addition, the exclusion provided by Revenue and Taxation Code Section 6009.1 does not apply here. It only applies when property is directly removed from California after its purchase, and there is no intervening taxable use of the property in California. Here, the vessel was both used and stored in California for 136 days, and petitioner sailed the vessel down the entire length of California, and this was a pleasure cruise, or as petitioner described it, in his words, a retirement experience. For those reasons, accordingly, we ask that you deny the petition. Thank you.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes on rebuttal, sir.
Well, I would only point out, I did estimate that I entered California waters on or about June 10th. Probably got to San Francisco Bay a few days later. And I started keeping my boat in Emeryville in July. The only use that the boat had between July and leaving Emeryville for San Diego in October was testing out the batteries, and I do have a receipt on the batteries. I thought that was already in the record, but if it's not, and and the other use was strictly me bettering my proficiency to keep going on this trip. Again, I was more of a crew than a captain coming down. I was the least experienced person on the boat, and I'm going to be the captain of this boat onward to San Diego and onward. So. Except for going on those weekend lessons with Jeff, I think his last name was Olson, but except for that boat was not used. That boat was sitting in Emeryville Marina, just waiting to depart. I would submit also weather was a factor, although it's very nice in California most of the year. It was hurricane season, and talking with my crew, which were mostly on the East Coast, except for Mike Brady, who was in Modesto with me, we all agreed that it would be safer and more prudent to wait and go with this Baja Haha, which it's a sailboat rally, which had this was 2011, had well over 100 boats in it, and there was a lot of communication. And well organized, it was a very safe way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Members? Member Brenner.
Just to kind of clarify the process here. Well, let me ask the department. The ability for storage, tell me about the options for storage when you have something that you bought you don't intend to use in the state.
I mean, you would store it.
Right. So what's the what is it in regards to, what does a person have to do to demonstrate that it was stored in the state, but the intended use was always to be out of the state?
It would depend on the facts of the case.
What are the facts that he would have to demonstrate?
It would depend on what it was you were looking at as far as what kind of object it was, where it was going. The department here doesn't dispute that his object was to eventually get this vessel to St. Croix.
So we don't dispute that his intended use was out of the state?
Was eventually.
Eventually.
To sail it to St.
Right.
Croix.
Okay.
So
the trigger is the issue in regards to the activity used in the state.
Right.
Okay.
Which was.
So let's go back to the issue of storage.
Well, it was more than mere storage. He sailed.
Tell me what tripped the issue of storage, that storage does not.
Well, storage is used. It's merely, if he can show that it wasn't purchased for use in the first 12 months in California, then the incidental use he may have put it to wouldn't matter. But he sailed it all the way down the coast to San Francisco. He sailed it on weekends. He sailed it from San Francisco all the way down to San Diego.
So let me ask you this.
This is a lot more than mere storage. I mean, he didn't bring it somewhere, leave it there, and just do what was necessary to keep it maintained, and then at the first opportunity, sail it directly out of the state. I mean, as he said, he was involved in a retirement experience.
In terms of a practical process, you can't just sail it out of the state. You got to stop along the way, right?
Well, I suppose it depends on the weather, it depends on the boat, it depends on the amount of the crew. Yeah.
Food and all that stuff, right?
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't expect to see someone sail from one end of California
Yeah,
to the
okay.
other end of
Right, without
California
stopping somewhere in the
nonstop.
state.
No.
Okay. So the issue that trips the issue in regards to storage is the issue of incidental use that we had identified.
The uses of the vessel in addition to storing it, yes.
During the storage period. I mean, let me ask you this. If he would have gone ahead and brought the vessel down, parked it in the bay for 6 months while hurricane season passed, and then got in there and sailed it away, would he have an issue?
If that was literally
Those were the
all-
facts.
If those were literally the facts, I would say, I mean, and never came back, I would say that it's unlikely that we would be
Okay,
here right
okay.
now.
So the thing that triggers it is the issue of the use while it was here that interrupted the
Yeah.
storage.
Or that preceded the storage, yes.
Well, again, we already deal with the preceded. If he would have brought it in and just, the fact, I mean, it's kind of crazy for us to say, well, it's bringing it in the state, because I don't know how you get a boat from there to here without bringing it into California.
It's a matter of degrees.
Okay,
I mean, he
right.
said.
So let's
he
talk about the
didn't-
degree. Let's talk
but-
about that for a minute.
Okay, he said he wasn't repositioning something, moving this. He was on his retirement cruise. This was a retirement adventure. He said they sailed very leisurely down the coast. They stopped at night, they stopped for
But he registered
weather. I mean,
But he registered the boat when he bought it to his destination, which he always said is where it was going to go.
yeah.
Okay. But the issue of use. Use could, again, in storage or coming into the state, you could not trip the issue of tax if it is for repair and you have demonstrated that correctly, correct?
Yes, and
Okay, okay.
repairs completed by,
Okay. So again, if he had battery problems out there, he brought it in, he got that done, and he had the correct documentation, that would not in itself then change the definition of storage.
no, if that
Okay.
was the sole reason he brought it into
Okay,
the state.
so it sounds to me what we're, again, and let me go with the taxpayer. And you've got documentation in regards to the repairs that were done on the boat?
Yes,
Let's come up to the mic. The mic.
yes, what I have is, an invoice, for, $3,100, paid on August 6, 2011, to American, Battery Company and an electrician,
Okay, that's good. That's fine. So you've got the invoices and the documentation on the repairs that were done. Okay, so tell me about what other uses did you have of that boat when it was here in California? How did you use the boat?
I didn't, I used the boat, once this was all done, this was pretty much all the repairs I needed to do, I thought were done by August.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in August, we had decided to wait, for the Baja Haha in October.
Right.
And I hired this guy, and I could get his full name, I wrote some checks to him, but, to help me with my sailing skills on weekends. I live in Modesto, it's weekdays and his schedule and mine, so we just met, for 4 or 5 Saturdays, and he, basically, taught me some, how to use a
Right,
spinnaker.
so you did use the boat, you did use it specifically for sailing lessons, and the sailing lessons were specifically done in order to help you then continue on your voyage
Exactly.
to your destination.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, I just didn't feel I was quite.
So in one sense, you were just like you had to repair your boat to sail correctly, right?
Yes.
You were basically preparing yourself to sail correctly.
Yeah, because initially when I got down there, there was an aha come moment where I was thinking this whole thing was I needed to sell this boat and get out of Dodge, but I I gathered myself together and I said, no, we can do this. This was a 2-year plan, so to speak. So
Okay. Okay, thank you. I may come back with this.
Any other questions, members?
I'd just like to,
Member Hort.
thank you, Madam Chair. I would like appeals to further clarify the definition of selling and at what point in time the use tax is triggered.
So I wanted to thank you. The definition of storage from section.
Storage, I'm sorry.
From 6008, any storage, any keeping or retention in the state for any purpose except sale in the regular course of business. The one exception to that is 6009.1, which has to be read in conjunction with 08 and 09, so that the storage doesn't include the storage for the purpose of getting it out of this state. I'm paraphrasing. Essentially, that has to be the exclusive purpose. It's not stored for sailing. It's not stored to wait. It's not being stored to then use in October. It's being stored only because you're trying to get it out. And to the extent there's more, the degree question, if you were to wait a couple of days might be one thing. You wait several months. Storage is taxable, except the storage for the purpose, the exclusive purpose of getting it out of here.
Right. Now, let me just say to the department, let me just encourage the department. When I ask the question, I want a complete answer. I mean, I don't want partial. I mean, when I hear that storage in and of itself is not taxable, knowing the law, in a hypothetical situation, it concerns me when the full description of storage and when storage is and when storage is not provided, or at least I didn't hear it, and that's why I asked for the clarification. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I'd just like to state that taking lessons on your boat is probably not storage. And I understand that you weren't prepared to sail, being a resident of California and then bringing your boat into California and then taking lessons and then keeping it for so long. I have, I'm empathetic to you, but I think legally the department is correct that the tax was owed. So that's where I am. Is there a motion? Members?
Yeah,
Move for the department.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion by Ms. Ma to move for the department, a second by Member Horton. Any objection? Noting no objection, the motion carries. Thank you for appearing before the board, and hope you have a nice retirement, the rest of it. Okay. Ms. Richmond, what's the next item on the agenda?
Our next item is item O, adoption of the board committee report and approval of committee actions. Item O1 is the legislative committee report from yesterday.
Do we have that report?
Move adoption.
There's a motion to move adoption of the board committee meeting report. Is there a second? Ms. Mott?
Second.
Okay, second. Okay, any objection? No? Okay, such will be the order. Next item, Ms. Richmond.
That concludes our business for this meeting.
Madam Chair, before you
Yes.
close out, with your permission, I will request that we adjourn the meeting and formally set forth in the records in the memory of Mr. Gao's brother, as well as the several other employees that have, experienced a loss in their family.
Certainly, it's not a pleasure, I would say, but it's a very sad occurrence. Mr. Gao lost his brother, as you all know. And while it may not have been sudden, it certainly was not anticipated. And so we feel our hearts and prayers go out to the family. So we do adjourn in memory of all of those who have passed. And That's it. We have concluded our business for this meeting, and the Board of Equalization is hereby adjourned. Done.
Thank you all.